Two, hello. Check 2, hello. Hello. Sibilance. Sibilance. Are you with me, chat? Hello. Sorry, I'm late getting started again. I did have every intention. I had every intention of starting on time today.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ebsta68. Thank you for the 2 months of Tier 1. A relatively new community member. I love to see it. Hello, Fonz. This war is going off rails. I desperately need Rob to talk me through all this. Well, that's what I'm going to do, as I do each and every day on here. We should link up at a protest sometime, Sam. I want that Sankara emote. It's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. We got lots of good emotes on here, and more are coming. More are coming. Yeah, so I had every intention of getting started on time today. Earlier today, Sippers, I feel like you have a different account each time you log on to this.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Golden Worm God, shower me with your friendship.
Marina, thank you very much for 24 months of Tier 1. And as you know, folks, if you know a little bit of math, as I do, 24 months, that's 2 entire years, which means Marina is the latest member with the ultra elite and exclusive shimmering golden 2-year sub badge. Thank you, Marina. And I'm happy to have you in the community, Marina. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Should have gotten one by default. Marina should get a cum badge by default. Not that that's what it is. It's a pearl, of course, but sorry. Okay, so earlier today, as you said that, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's not what it is. It's pearl. It's gold, and then the next level up is pearl, and there's nothing wrong with that. So earlier today, I met my friend Nicole, who I haven't seen in many years. Someone that is from the town that I grew up with. The town that I grew up in, who I've known since I was in high school. And haven't seen Nicole in many years, and recently found out that she was in Montreal. We've been talking about getting together for a breakfast or something sometime, and was able to do that today, which was very nice. It was nice to see her. We had a good breakfast at a legendary breakfast spot in my neighborhood, which I've probably talked about before. And afterwards, it was getting a little late. We went because she had passed. There's this book and record store near where I live that she had passed that she wanted to go check out. So I went over there to get some books. What breakfast place? I mean, I want to talk about it, Jay, but I feel weird talking about my neighborhood and like fully doxing myself. I think I've been open enough about where I live. I don't want to start giving people the exact coordinates. It's like the cryptic Fight Club reference, a major one. A major greasy lunch counter in Montreal. So afterwards, just went to the bookstore. And I'll show you what I got, actually. So I found this. I'm pretty sure I don't have a copy of this. I found this copy of Slaughterhouse 5. Pretty good condition. I got this. Marx Selected Writings in Sociology and Social Philosophy. Which is one that I don't have. I also found, of course, from friend of the show. My personal friend, not even a friend of the show. my personal friend and colleague, Vijay Prashad, I found this copy of The Darker Nations there, which I was super excited by. So, for whatever reason, their machine was not working. Their internet had gone down, so I had to go across the street to take out some cash to pay for this stuff. And I came back. I was paying for my books, and I heard this buzzing. I could feel I thought there was a fly buzzing around me or something, and I just went I just swatted at it because it was buzzing around my head, and it was a fucking wasp, and it stung my head. A wasp stung my head. And it hurts. You know? It's not ha ha ha, wasp stung my head. Isn't that funny? It hurts. It hurts a little bit less now. I got back to my apartment after and I was lying down and I had to put a ice bag on it because it's this throbbing pain right on my right almost on my temple. Right there. I don't know if it actually stung or if it bit or not. I didn't inspect enough. I believe a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant got your ass in the head. I was I'm one of you. What's the matter? So that's what happened. It hurts a little bit less now. It just it's a dull ache now, but it's very painful. It was very painful. I got stung in the fucking head by a wasp. What the hell's going on? Otherwise, I had a pretty nice morning, though. It was nice. I had a nice breakfast. I was feeling pretty good, actually. I was feeling good. Wasps and bees know better than to mess with me. Well, normally when I see a wasp, I don't swat at it for that exact reason. I didn't realize that that's what it was. I thought it was a mosquito or a fly or something. Anyway, I had a lot of coffee with breakfast, but now I'm opening up this energy drink, so we're going to really I'm going to really be ranting and raving today. You wanted to smash a fly into your head? No, I just wanted to give it a little whack. Chin chin. Here's the thing about the G Cluppy book challenge, okay? Here's the thing. So I've read 2 out of the 5 books, 2.5. I had one of those earlier today, Ultra Sunrise. That's right. I really enjoy these. I've also read, I've read The Hobbit completely out loud. And I've now read 2/3 of Fellowship at the Ring totally out loud. So I am on pace to read 5 books. 2 of the books I'm not really counting now. So we're going to have to get some kind of a ruling on that. I know it's not the books that I meant to read. Meant to read. I can read, by the way. I can read and I'm able to speak as well. So we're going to have to get a ruling on that. Because I believe if I remember correctly, Jiggy Clubby said that she would assault me or something, or some kind of violent retribution, which I don't want. No one wants that. I don't even think she wants it. So we're gonna have to get a ruling on whether that counts. Because I am on pace to read the 5 books, not the books that I wanted to read. But I am on pace. If tomorrow I drink 7 cups of coffee, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan. But when I drink 1 Monster Energy every day, well, then everyone loses their minds. Introduce a little anarchy, upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. How's that? How fast do you have to read $5 for the book challenge? It's literally 5 books in 1 year. It's not a lot. Like I have a hard time reading because my brain is bad. Okay? I've been trying to make it through all the books on my shelf that I need to read, but my brain is bad, so I've not been good at it. That's why I pledged to read 5 of my books that is on my list this year. And I have read 2.5, in addition to some of the Lord of the Rings books that I read out loud. Shout out to Bad Brains. Jules knows what I'm talking about. Oh. It really hurts. If a wasp stung my fucking head, like I'm still having, even saying it out loud is like, what? By this measure, I've read 30 to 40 books aloud this year, like the entire fairy series. My kid keeps getting at the school library. Rockstar Fairy. No, shut up, you don't exist. Yeah, this is a novel, Marty. This is a novel. Okay? This is a dense novel. It's not a I don't count like little children's books that I read sometimes. Okay? I'm not counting those. These are novels. It's bookkeeping and I won't have it. I do need to, like, honestly, I'm halfway through Devil's Chessboard and it's so great. Like, I actually need to finish it. I believe next up in our book club is supposed to be Walter Rodney. And, like, I would really like to be a part of that. So if that's going on, I really genuinely will try to get back on track and at least put a dent into that for the first meetup. My understanding of the Red Scary Book Club is that it was on a little bit of a hiatus because there was a lot of intense learning and discussion going on. Someone on C-SPAN mentioned it this morning. Do you mean Devil's Chessboard? Oh yeah, Devil's Chessboard is so good. It's honestly like, it just rearranges your whole brain when you see how evil the people are that founded the vast intelligence apparatus that we spend all day talking about. All the Fourth Reich stuff, it comes into such clear focus when you read that and you're like, oh, okay. We're ruled by Nazis. Okay. I get it now. Not metaphorically, not figuratively. Literal, actual Nazis who created our entire post-war intelligence and security apparatus spanning the globe. You read that and you're like, oh, okay. It's crazy. And you're like, oh, okay, Alan Dulles had JFK killed. I see that now. I mean, we already did see that, but it couldn't be more clear when you learn about Dulles and what his vision was and how him and Kennedy clashed, and Kennedy let him go, and then he doesn't. It's not like he left the CIA. Really, he just went private and just started running the CIA from another office, basically. And they're like, of course Dulles had JFK killed. It's like, it couldn't be more obvious. Like, it's like almost like a farce. How obvious it is, how guilty it is. It's so clear. Kennedy should have Stalined Dulles. He should have Stalined a whole bunch of people. He's too much of a liberal himself, though. He believed his own liberal bullshit. That's his problem, isn't it? If he had Stalined some people, then probably he himself and his family and America would be in way better shape today. P2, Gladio, Spider Network, Deep State Parapolitics. That shit's crazy. I mean, it's really a 1-2 punch. Devil's Chessboard and then Jakarta Method. Like, I read Jakarta Method first, but if you read, like, you see the establishment of the intelligence networks in the post-war period with Devil's Chessboard, and then you see what they did with that power in Jakarta Method, and you're like, holy shit. If only there was someone that had information about this Phoenix program that could come and lay it out for us. Unfortunately, we don't know anyone like that, so it's just going to remain a mystery, I suppose. Incredible that a sitting senator, Chuck Schumer, said the CIA is unaccountable to any elected official and no one even cared. Yeah, they just accepted it at this point. It's the amazing thing, too, like I've talked about, there used to be energy in the Democratic Party to, like, talk about the CIA and to criticize the CIA and have, like, the church committee and try to uncover, like, what the CIA is doing. Now that's just gone now. Now the CIA is they're running members in the party. And they celebrate that. They're like, look how patriotic we are. We've got these former CIA heroes running in our elections. Now let's all vote to fund some genocide. Yeah, former CIA people. Yeah, and Bush was the literal president. The CIA, heroes for preventing socialism from saving our society and global society. Do you know how different the world would look like if the anti-colonial movements of the post-war period were just allowed to progress naturally? It's honestly like it will break your brain to think about the world that could have existed. I've talked about it before, but that's the really heartbreaking thing about Jakarta Method is it spends the first third or so of the book setting the table for that moment and the hope and the optimism that these oppressed and colonized people had of this new era that was on the horizon, and the way it was just ruthlessly stamped out, ruthlessly and violently destroyed. It's awful. It's awful. But you need to learn the history. You need to learn this. Everyone needs to understand this. The evil. It's evil. They're evil people. Not like, oh, there are people that were making hard decisions and, you know, they made some mistakes and they did some good things. No. Evil monsters. These people. And they won. Their faction won. Decades ago. Whatever there was a push and pull between different factions in the U.S. government when it came to the security state or the intelligence community, that faction won. The absolute most evil monsters you can imagine. It's crazy, too, because they saw Indonesia as a bigger prize than Vietnam and Laos. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, oh, we lost in Vietnam. And, you know, technically they did. But meanwhile, while Vietnam was happening, they're carrying out a similar policy with a totally different strategy in Indonesia. Getting 1 million people killed in the process. I think they won because we just weren't nice enough to them. We need to work with them. We need to work with the deep state Nazis that control the U.S. government. We should do entryism. Entryism into the deep state Nazi mass murder club. We'll change it from within. We're going to change it from within, okay? The US and UK destroyed any hope for a better world in Southeast Asia. Well, not entirely destroyed. Like, you're right, they did. But they only delayed it. I think that's the thing that I try to take away. They only delayed it for a little while. They destroyed it for about a generation, and now, once again, now we have hope again. For not just, for Southeast Asia and for Central and South America. Yeah, we have our people on the inside. John Fetterman, AOC, Bernie Sanders. There we go. It's going great. I have a clip of a rant from TrueAnon saved on my computer talking about how they
count on
me.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through
depressing.
All this.
Dr. Maggot, thank you very much for the gifted sub. Thank you, Dr. Maggot, for all the support. Very, very kind of you. It's nice to have genuine bona fide doctors in the community, too. Like Dr. Maggot. Speaking of South America, any thoughts on the deal Venezuela made recently? We would need to look more into it. I would like to hear more from people in Venezuela about that. I mean, I think Venezuela needs to be doing whatever it can to get out under U.S. sanctions. They need to improve quality of life for people. And taking the opportunity with all the chaos of Russia and Ukraine and the fact that the U.S. needs other access to foreign oil deposits, I think Venezuela should absolutely take advantage of that. I finally have 1 million channel points. One day, maybe even in season 4, in 2 weeks, we can find something to use these goddamn channel points for. Gifted sub to Canadians are sorry. We sure are sorry. There's a sorry bunch of saps living up here. Oh, my fucking head. God damn it.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Kijiji Genie, for the gifted sub as well. Too much wine. No, I didn't have too much wine. A wasp stung my head. It really hurts. How big are those stingers anyway? They can't be that big. The old wasp stung my head excuse. Yeah. It is dumb. No, it is. Remember when Livy rizzed up Baby Gronk? I've never forgotten where I was when I heard that. That earth-shattering story. When Livy rizzed up Baby Gronk. Nothing was ever the same after that, really. When you think about it. He's the new Riz Lord. I mean, that's the inescapable conclusion. Okay, I'm going to stop complaining about my wasp sting. Any moment now. What else is going on? Oh yeah, how was the 28 Days Later movie night the other night? I was really sorry to miss that. I did I went out and I was doing networking and it was important to do, and it was fun also, so I wasn't able to do it this time, but I regretted missing it though, because I really wanted to watch it with the community. But I did watch it last night because I had missed it. It really is great. It's interesting too, stylistically, it's interesting. It was when that shift to digital was happening. It looks kind of weird, but it kind of works for the film. it was cool at the time because I was always such a huge fan of the genre, like the zombie genre. Like Dawn of the Dead is like my favorite movie. It was another movie we watched recently. And for a long time, that was kind of all you had. You had the Romero movies. There was like the Return of the Living Dead movies, which I didn't like that much. There's like the Italian zombie movies, but there's not this huge genre of zombie films, which there is now. But when 28 Days Later came out, it was kind of the first kind of mainstream kind of apocalypse zombie movie that I'd seen come out in theaters for a long time, or basically in my whole life. And so cool. And I love especially just the opening sequence. Like there's the opening sequence in like the animal lab testing facility, but then there's the whole, from the time Cillian Murphy wakes up in the hospital. I love that is something that since I was a kid that just activates something in my brain. And see him stumble around the destroyed hospital. It's so many tropes that I'm interested in going on. I love the mysterious, horrible incident has happened trope that you see sometimes. Is it Cillian or is it Cillian Murphy? Hold on a second. Cillian, okay. That whole sequence though, when he wakes up and the hospital's all wrecked, no one's there, and he leaves and he's just walking around London and it's just empty. It's so cool. Like it looks amazing. Like you mentioned, Marty, it is kind of by the numbers, but I love that shit. And it hadn't gotten old at that time. Like maybe these tropes have gotten old, but at that time, like I was saying, there wasn't this huge multi-billion-dollar zombie genre with Walking Dead and comic books and all kinds of different movies and stuff like that. Just didn't really exist at that time. And I love all those tropes, like walking around London and it's empty, all the trash everywhere, picking up the newspaper with the headlines, Exodus, and you see the big column in London with all the people's pictures, all the missing people. I love that stuff. Absolutely love it. I love when he goes into the church and you see the writing on the wall. The end is extremely fucking nigh. Great stuff. I like too the liberties they took with the whole zombie thing, and they made them. It was different from a Romero movie. You know, they introduced the fast zombie, which then other zombie films copied. That was novel at the time. Zombies running around, which is scary in and of itself, because usually you're used to them stumbling around, shambling along. It is very scary. Yeah. Yeah, Children of Men, of course, is fantastic for that level as well. For that kind of trope. I did fall asleep last night towards the end, so I'll have to watch the end tonight, but the end where Jim goes postal on the soldier should have been done by Selena, I think. That's a good criticism, I think. Yeah. Yeah, the whole like military guy third act thing. It's very disturbing, and I think it's very in line with that kind of Romero zombie movie kind of like idea. To me, it's really about that first act though, and that opening is just so fucking fantastic. I really like and I love the Brendan Gleeson's character and like his daughter meeting up with them. That's so cool. And he has the worst zombie movie death. And he's such a lovable guy, and you have this like kind of family relationship that's forming, and it's so bad with the crow. Get out of it. With the drop of, oh no, I'm just thinking about it now. It's so bad. Oh God. It's so bad. Oh. You remember so well? No, I watched it last night. I had wanted to watch it with the community, but I missed it. But I did watch it last night. I've been watching a bunch of spooky movies. Oh God, that is awful. That is just awful. And like I was talking, and I believe we've got 28 Weeks Later coming up, right? We've got Army of Darkness tomorrow at 10 p.m. I thought that was Sunday. I might have a hard time with that. I'm sorry for not going to the Evil Dead movies yet. I have not been able to make it work. I know that was important to our friend John, and I feel bad for not showing up for one of those. I had wanted to do Evil Dead 2, and I have not been able to. Monday we got Misery, which is going to be fucking great. Misery is amazing, and that's going to be really cool, especially for people that haven't seen that. Wednesday we got 28 Weeks Later, which is not as good, I don't think, as the original, but it's a totally worthy sequel, and it's got an incredible opening 15 minutes or so. It's got one of the all-time best openings. I'm just remembering right now that I saw 28 Weeks Later in the theater in Toronto when it came out. And I was with a girl that I was hanging out with at the time, and I think in retrospect, I think that may have been a date, but I don't think I realized that it was at the time. Anyway, Jeremy Renner is in that one. Yeah, that's one of his first major. That's one of his first major films, and he's good in it too. Anyway, I was happy to watch that again. I remember the first sequence, but not much else. I mean, I think that's one of the cool things about the genre. This moment where you have to make an impossible choice, and you see that in the opening to that film, and it's brutal. I'm looking forward to watching that with the community, though. I'm looking forward to both Misery and that. Misery is going to be fantastic. Misery is so great. Maybe we can not have like spoilers. Maybe we can not have spoilers about the film that we're going to watch. In the chat, spoilers for the film that we're going to watch that people have not seen. I think that would probably be best if we avoided major plot point spoilers for upcoming films that people have not seen. But the spoiler tags don't work. It doesn't block the words. And now I'm calling attention to it. So now even if people didn't see it, now they're looking. My favorite trope of the genre is when someone hides their zombie bite from the group. And it's funny too, because it's like it always seems kind of unrealistic, right? It always seems kind of unrealistic. But now after the COVID period, it's like, oh yeah, no, of course, there's probably a lot of people that would be like that. That's one cool thing about 28 Days Later, right? That there's not this like extended process of zombification. It's like this immediate thing. And there's that fucked up moment. You introduce the Mark character at the beginning, and you see like he gets a lot of lines at the beginning, and you think, oh, this is like a main character in the movie. And there's that moment. There's this attack that happens, and he's like, you can see he's like trying to brush away the blood from the bite, and it's like immediately just like Selena goes into machete mode. Well, this is a spoiler to a movie that we watched in the community the other day, so I think it's allowed this time. I was watching Return of the Living Dead Part 2 the other night. I never really liked those, even though they're good and fun. I was always like, I really liked those Romero movies, and it felt like those were kind of mocking it a little bit. So I didn't like them as much. Although I did point out the other day, and I don't know if this is too much information, there is a scene in Return of the Living Dead, the original one, that I do remember, I recall very vividly, that takes place in a graveyard in the opening act of the film. Not to get too into the details. Class dynamics is always interesting in the zombie movies. Yeah, and you see a lot of that in Dawn of the Dead, and you really see it in the fourth Romero movie, Land of the Dead, which is it's really like on the surface. It's not even like a subtext in that one, but it's really cool the way that they talk about that, the class dynamics. Train to Busan. No, I haven't seen that one. That's probably one that I should check out as well, isn't it? The main hero in it being a black zombie was pretty on the nose. A working man. A working man. Works at the gas station. Even in death. I think I've talked about it. I think I talked about it the other night when we watched Dawn of the Dead, but Land of the Dead has one of my very favorite zombie gags in like the opening of the film. It's like panning through this town. It makes me laugh every time I think about it. And there's like a zombie band. There's like this little gazebo, and these zombies are in there with instruments, and you can tell that they like want to do something with them, but they don't know exactly what it is. And this one, it has like a trombone or something. It's just like hitting it against the wall. They're just hanging out in this gazebo trying to play music together, but they don't totally know what these things are. It's so funny. I laugh every time I think about it. There's such a movie, and it's World War Z, where they cower behind Israel's walls that were initially built to fuck up every Palestinian's life. That's also the movie where North Korea removes every citizen's teeth. Yeah, no, I remember. I really enjoyed the book, but the movie was shit. The movie jettisoned everything that made the book remotely interesting. I'm just seeing if you can see the zombie band. I love them. Yes. I'm sorry. I just really love this. This just pops me every time. These guys. Sorry. I love those guys. Man, sorry. Kind of a tangent. Tuba zombie, exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's like a toddler. That's what I mean. Like when we watched Dawn of the Dead the other night. That's why I really love those Romero zombies. There's kind of there's something tragic about them. There's this sadness to them. My parents' old house is officially done. I'm getting day drunk to celebrate. That's good to hear that. Good. Congratulations. I guess we're gonna have to start talking about important business soon. 1:48. I started late, so trying to get down to business soon. Nick, hello, what's up? How's it going? Nick, a wasp stung my head today. Oh, I got a wasp stung me on my fucking head. Did Rob eat yet? Yes, I mentioned earlier. I went out for breakfast at a local legendary breakfast place. I had a very good breakfast earlier, prior to the wasp stinging my head.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. Thank you for that. I've never had a sting in my life, but I assume it hurts like hell. It does, especially when it's directly on your fucking skull. I think it makes it even worse. I already told the story, so I don't want to bore people, but I just heard something buzzing around my head, and I was just like, you're like just not thinking about it. And it was a wasp. And it stung my head. Very unfortunate. This is funny. Has anyone seen people like freaking out about Greta? Grown men really love freaking out about this fucking child who is like, climate change is bad. This is very threatening for some people. She posted this link. She posted this picture that has this little like octopus creature behind her as a Stand with Gaza. And people are like, she's doing like anti-Semitic symbolism. The Kraken. She's referencing the anti-Semitic cartoon of Jewish octopi with its tendrils around the world. And it's like, holy shit, man. But then we'll also tell you Nazi symbology on Azov is meaningless. Yeah, like, I don't know if it's Warmington, but I saw a guy with like the Ukraine, he's one of these big Ukraine guys pointing to it. You see someone with like an SS tattoo on their neck, and you're like, that doesn't seem like anything to me. I don't know. And you see a little stuffed plushie toy, and it's like, anti-Semitism. People are insane. Yes, it's been quite an experience seeing people just go more and more insane. A good Visegrad. Are Greta's friends subtly claiming that the Jews are behind climate change? That's where we're at now. Visegrad 24, who I remember had the fucking take the other day, they had the complete audacity to when we were following the different coups going on in Africa, in Niger specifically, and Visegrad is like Africa, Eastern Europe too was colonized by the Soviet Union. And it's like, good Lord. If you unironically think that there's any comparison whatsoever between the colonization of Africa on the part of like the Belgian and the Dutch and the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French and the English and the Americans is in any way comparable with like the Soviet Union elevating the serfs in Eastern Europe, and especially in the post-war period, to a somewhat decent living standard for the first time in centuries. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in your mind. Yeah, that's what we're going on. People are just totally insane. That's good. I think we can start out by, I've got a couple things to look at as it relates to, Gaza, what's happening. Is Rob saluting us or just touching his wound? I'm doing both. Not mutually exclusive. I think this could be good. There's this segment on Al Jazeera to start off. It's like a 25-minute video we can take a look at. And I got a number of other different tweets and clips and things that we can discuss after. I mean, Biden just announced now this huge aid package to both Israel Mark Lamont Hill has been very good. I mean, Mark Lamont Hill is someone that got actually canceled for his stance on this, and credit to him for continuing to talk about this. Yeah, so the Biden just announced that aid package. Sending billions of dollars to this country while they're on the process of like engaging in ethnic cleansing and genocide is just absolutely sick. And yeah, linking it to the Ukraine thing, so you know full well that these two things are linked. And bizarrely, trying to equate Hamas and Putin, that's the amazing thing. Both Ukraine and Israel, Jack, they're both being threatened by these invading Asiatic hordes. That's basically what he's saying, right? Just spelling it out for everybody. Now they're threatening to bomb a hospital with 12,000 people in it, the Al-Quds hospital. And I noticed as well, they committed this other atrocity at this Christian church in Palestine as well. Another couple of hundred victims of that ferocious bombing. And there's no even effort to deny that, right? They only really riot when there's a big international outcry, then they'll play this whole game of obfuscation and denial. Has there been any effort to even deny that they bombed the Christian church in Palestine? It doesn't seem like they're even making any effort to pretend that they weren't involved in that. He spent the entire time talking about Putin. It's too absurd. I mean, it's really just spelling it out for everyone. Like we've been saying, we know this because we're in this community and we talk about this and we know these things. We have an actual understanding of these kind of geopolitical affairs, but that's it. That's exactly why, Ukraine people, Ukraine supporters, who they try to talk about Palestine, but there's no relation. There's no relation in between the struggle of Ukrainians against the Russian invasion or the struggle of the Palestinians. Most Ukrainian nationalists, they see themselves as Israel. They see themselves as this outpost of Western civilization. And America sees them, of course, as client states. They're American client states. That's why the whole thing about Ukraine has been so absurd in the first place, to talk about sovereignty and democracy and all that stuff. It's not sovereign or democratic. It wasn't previously, and it's not going to be now. It's a U.S. client state that is a valuable strategic asset to the United States, the Anglo-American Empire, on Russia's doorstep and in the Middle East. And that's all. That's all it's ever been about. Anyway, let's look at this clip. We can watch this segment from Al Jazeera with Mark Lamont Hill. We'll do that. For sure, the rest of the world recognizes that. I mean, this is the thing. For whatever, if there wasn't total clarity for everyone in the world about what the American empire's values are and who it stands with, and all the bullshit about human rights, if it wasn't clear to everyone around the world before, and it was mostly, but it's certainly clear now. Don't mock me, Lodane. A wasp stung my head, Lodane. Okay? A wasp stung my head. That's why that happened. That's why I said that. Was it a Russian wasp? I don't know that it wasn't. It very well could have been. Anyway, here's the segment with Al Jazeera and Mark Lamont Hill.
Continues its complete siege and bombing of Gaza. In an upfront special, we discuss how the war is being presented in the West and whether there is any hope for a ceasefire. Following Hamas's deadly October 7th attack that claimed the lives of more than 1,000 Israelis, including hundreds of civilians,
we simply
Israel retaliated,
used the computer to mark up the size of the account.
If a wasp could stumble him like this, imagine what a goose could do.
Colin Greek, thank you for the 200 friend coin. I did kill the wasp. Okay. It got a little lick in. Okay. I'll admit that. But overall, I won that contest. And a goose would be no issue for me. I do sympathize with the wasp sting, but also that felt like shades, so I had to point it out. Well, that's fair.
The Gaza Strip.
We're not reopening
much of the West
goose
expressed
discourse,
solidarity with
as I
Israel,
used to see the other
asserting
guy.
its right to
Thank you.
self-defense. Human rights groups have also condemned Israel's disproportionate response. More than 4,000 people, including hundreds of children, have been killed and at least 1 million displaced, which raises concerns about potential violations of international law. With tensions running high, violence has spread outside of Gaza, with attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank and Islamophobic and anti-Semitic attacks on the rise globally. Joining us to discuss this all in Tel Aviv is Haggai Matar, Executive Director of Plus 972 magazine. In Philadelphia, Nora Arikat, a human rights law scholar and associate professor at Rutgers University. And here in the studio with me is Lara Friedman, president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. Thank you all for joining me. Haggai, I'm going to start with you. We've seen the dire situation in Gaza. Schools and hospitals destroyed, residents struggling to get basic necessities. I mean, water, for example. But violence against Palestinians has drastically risen in the occupied West Bank. At least 58 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th, and there are reports that 2 villages have been depopulated.
I mean, I think that's worth pointing out. I don't want to interrupt too much, but like this idea that Israeli civilians are being targeted by this violence, but like there's also Israeli civilians right now carrying out violence. They're being armed. They were doing it previously, and now they've been emboldened even more. And there's Israeli settlers engaging in the ongoing like violent vigilante terrorist attacks, which further, in my opinion, kind of blurs the line between who is kind of a civilian in this conflict and who is not.
The situation has become increasingly unsustainable for Palestinians. At least 229 Palestinians have been killed since the beginning of this year. Can you talk about the reasons behind this escalation of violence, and particularly in the West Bank?
Yes, of course. Well, we're getting reports even as we speak about additional communities that are being displaced and ethnically cleansed. So we're seeing a move by the settlers, a very intentional move to capture on the fact that the world's attention is on Gaza right now, and that Israel is getting so much solidarity and support from the world.
You can count on me. You're going to have good
care.
old Rob to talk you through all this.
Diego, thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the support. Thank you.
De facto, we're seeing settlers day after day, night after night, attacking Palestinian communities and really pushing them out, destroying entire villages. So that is happening as we speak. Like you said, over 60 people killed, but it's less of a new beginning, just an escalation of what we've seen in recent years, and especially over the past year, with the Israeli government really giving a free hand for settlers to attack Palestinian communities. The pattern is usually of settlers attacking a Palestinian community. They're accompanied by soldiers. They would set fire to Palestinian houses or cars or just attack people. And if Palestinians try to defend themselves by throwing stones, the army would jump in and start shooting at the people who are defending themselves, often killing Palestinians. We've seen a lot of that in recent days, but also over the past year. And that is a culmination of about 2 years of escalating violence in the West Bank. The PA is essentially non-functional. It is not offering Palestinians any defense. The Israeli army and police are not offering Palestinians any defense. And settlers are becoming more and more emboldened in these attacks. While at the same time, the army itself is also attacking, invading Palestinian cities in the West Bank. And this is a pattern that we've seen escalate over the past 2 years.
Nora, it's not just that the Israeli government is watching as settlers are engaging in more intensified acts of violence and more frequent acts of violence. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said on Tuesday that Israel began distributing assault rifles to civilian security teams. That's the language they use. Civilian security
You're
teams
not really a civilian,
inside of settlements.
A civilian if you're
what does that
an
mean,
armed security
how
team
does that
engaging in
bode
terroristic
when we think
violence
about
against people.
de-escalation, peace agreements, stability, any of these things?
I think that it's important to put this in a broader context of what Israel has done in its settler colonization efforts. And I think that we should be mindful that in this situation, what is happening is an ongoing bid to remove Palestinians from their homes, not just since '67, but since Israel's establishment in 1948, and to replace them with settlers. This is happening obviously in the West Bank. It's happening in the ethnic cleansing of the villages and the Judaization known as ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem. It is happening in the south of Israel in the Naqab, and it's happening through warfare in the Gaza Strip by removing Palestinians, the forced population transfer, the shrinking of the perimeter of the coastal enclave in order to take more land without the people.
Lara, this picture that Nora is painting makes this far more complicated than just a war that will begin and end.
It is refreshing hearing an actual news channel calling Israel what it is. And again, Mark Lamont Hill was on with CNN and got fired for criticizing Israel. Was accused of anti-Semitism for being totally correct. So again, it's kudos to him for continuing to talk about this, despite the actual career repercussions that he's suffered because of it.
Colonial project that seems to have the sanction not just of the state, but in some ways maybe the global community. What do you make of that?
In more than some ways.
I think if you understand what's happening in Gaza through the lens of Israel trying to, exactly what Nora said, trying to shrink the enclave, trying to get...
I like to, not to keep interrupting, but I like too that it's like a panel to talk about this issue, but it's not like, here's what Mr. Zionist representative says. Here's what Mr. Palestinian representative said, and have them yelling at each other. It's a panel of different people that are coming from different perspectives to talk about the thing that we all know to be true, that Israel is a genocidal settler colonial project. And you can unpack that through a bunch of different voices, but there's no effort to be even-handed or to have some kind of different viewpoint. It's no, our editorial line here is that Israel is a genocidal settler colony. That's being backed by the West, and let's have a variety of different viewpoints that explain and underscore that. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
More Palestinians out and take more land. If you look at what's happening in the West Bank, the violence that Haggai's talking about isn't random. We're in the process of finally clearing out Palestinians from Area C, which is 60% of the West Bank. Danny Seidemann, who's talked for years about the part of the Israeli public which wants to finish the 1948 war. They say there is no Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The 1948 war isn't done. And finishing it means establishing and completing Israeli sovereignty over all the land between the river and the sea. And that means depopulating of Palestinians as best one can and limiting the presence and the rights of those that you can't move.
Which is also funny because they say when you say Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, it's anti-Semitic, it's genocidal, it's this, it's that. It's like, and that's literally their ideology, is that no, it should be Israel from the river to the sea and actually beyond, greater Israel. But like that's their whole policy, that's their whole ideology. But of course, when you say from the river to the sea, they're like, I feel scared now, I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe when you say that. You know, it's just a total sham.
In recent years, we saw some progress, some pushback.
Always just projection. Whenever we talk about imperialism and the accusations that we hear.
Then October 7th.
Always projection.
And it feels like
you're genociding our genocide.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Clobocop, thank you for a gifted sub. Very kind of you. Thank you.
One again. We're literally seeing media representations where people are attending a ceasefire rally or a pro-Palestinian rights rally or something designed to stop the violence that we see right now and fight for justice. And we've seen media outlets refer to them as pro-Hamas rallies or pro-ISIS rallies. We've seen misinformation, disinformation spread in ways that undermines free speech rights for the people doing the protesting. What role does the media play in escalation here?
I think that the media, the mainstream media has abdicated its responsibility and journalistic integrity in order to report, to question, to investigate, to ask really hard questions. Instead, they have been propagating
I was just talking about that, Red Scary.
A U.S. government line, a U.S. government that has provided unequivocal support, financial, military, economic, to Israel.
He actually got canceled.
Its veto power, now the 44th veto, to undermine, in this moment, a ceasefire, and historically, to undermine an international resolution and any accountability to Israel. And rather than a media corps exercising its journalistic skills and responsibility in order to push back and to push hard, we see them propagating these lies. We see them actually fomenting violence in war by using Islamophobic tropes, by building on the infrastructure of the war on terror, by running headlines that this is a hostage crisis as opposed to a political crisis, by describing this as a war between Israel and Gaza or Israel and Hamas, when in fact this is a war against all Palestinians and a continuing process. The mere fact.
No, let me interrupt you for a second, because in addition to the ethical and moral dimensions of this, from a legal perspective, you're an international human rights attorney. How culpable are media outlets potentially if they run a story or a headline or make a claim that foments violence?
Like CNN. You saw that CNN journalist being like chased out of Gaza, or not even in Gaza, but it's around one of the crossings. I haven't seen the clip. I was waiting to look at it on the stream, so I don't know the total details, but you see the way that like they're being treated justifiably, totally justifiably. And it's like to the setup as well. I think it's just like, it's totally worth talking about the ways that like every single form of resistance has been ruthlessly crushed and Hamas has been promoted by Israel, you know, and they've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and resources making this link with people like Palestinians equal Hamas. And anytime you say free Palestine, it means Hamas. Anytime you do a rally in support of Palestinians, it means you support Hamas. They've literally like worked to create that exact outcome and make that link in people's minds. And now we're seeing that when people are standing up for Palestinian human rights at a time when they're undergoing this like unprecedentedly violent bombing campaign, and people just instantly link that to Hamas. It's been a carefully cultivated kind of project to link these thoughts in people's minds, which has been pretty successful. But it's been fantastic to see these protests happening despite this kind of accusation. And I like how people are not being swayed by this bullshit anymore.
They are very culpable. I made this point yesterday when we were looking at what the BBC ran a headline 24 hours before the bombing of the Al Ahli hospital that said, does Hamas run tunnels underneath hospitals and schools? Immediately, what triggered for me is a point to remind the journalistic corps that the Genocide Convention holds individuals to account not merely for the commitment of genocide, but for genocidal intent, for aiding it, for being complicit
Journalists
in it.
got tried at
By
Nuremberg.
running that headline, by perpetuating this idea that there are no Palestinian civilians, as the President Isaac Herzog said, without pushing back, as accepting without criticism the genocidal intent that was articulated by the Israeli Minister of Defense, that Palestinians are human animals and they will impose a complete siege, preventing the access of water and electricity and humanitarian corridors. They are actually being complicit.
Haggai, help me understand this from within the Israeli and Palestinian context. You're on the ground. Are we seeing similar opposition to pro-Palestinian voices?
Yes, definitely. But I want to start slightly before that with the effects of the October 7th attack. I do think that it broke something very essential in the discourse. There's a huge challenge that we're facing right now. I mean, the very real reality of Palestinians massacring hundreds of unarmed Israeli civilians at a field where there was just a dance party, people that were murdered, slaughtered in their homes. I mean, that reality with over 1,300 victims, most of them civilians. I
still haven't seen any concrete figures on that.
It only makes sense that for a lot of people, there would be this feeling of we have supported, the Palestinian struggle or the struggle for justice, but now it's making it much more difficult to support. And this is something we all need to contend with. How do we create or sustain a discourse about Palestinian justice and about Palestinian liberation and about resisting apartheid, and at the same time being consecutive in rejecting these war crimes against Israelis? I think that complexity is missing in so many spaces. Leading amongst them is the Israeli discourse, where, of course, the only prevailing narrative, and this connects to what Nora is saying, is we are only the victims. See what they're doing to us. We are only the victims here. We're only defending ourselves. And that reality is leading to what we're seeing now on the ground, which is persecution of anyone saying anything that is in the slightest critical.
Yeah, seriously,
government.
Lodian, I agree.
So that reality, alongside dozens of Palestinians who have been arrested, fired, or suspended from universities in Israel, that is part of the persecution that's happening because there's absolutely no room for criticism of the government policies following October 7th.
On Wednesday, Molotov cocktails were hurled at a synagogue in the center of Berlin, and there have been reports of swastikas spray painted at schools and on buildings in the United States. Lara, incidents like these have certainly increased since October 7th. Do you foresee this getting worse?
So I don't know about the data in the United States on incidents like these in the United States increasing. There has been incidents of anti-Palestinian violence in the United States, including a 6-year-old child stabbed to death in Chicago, including someone in Michigan arrested because he advertised who wants to come with me to Dearborn, and I think he said hunt Palestinians. We've seen videos online of people raging against Palestinian protesters in ways that if they did this against
that was a nice judo move she did
they
there.
would be certainly arrested. It would be called anti-Semitism.
Do you also implicate the media in that? And specifically what you're talking about was Saturday the 14th, a Palestinian mother and son were
the day
stabbed
of rage.
in Illinois by their landlord. The 6-year-old boy was stabbed 26 times.
That is the most horrifying story. I can't even
detectives
fucking
determined
talk
that the
about
mother
it.
and son were targeted in light of them, quote, being Muslim and the ongoing Middle Eastern conflict involving Hamas and the Israelis. This is from the police. What role does the media play in making this stuff
The media
worse?
plays a tremendous role. I believe the rest of that article says that.
I mean, yeah, Mark Lowenhill is good, so I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt here. I think these are it's important to ask. You can ask these questions and then have someone being able to give competent answers and steer that conversation into what really matters. But yeah, the idea that it's Palestinians out there painting swastikas on schools is nonsense, you know? If anyone's painting swastikas, it's neo-Nazis who almost to a person support Israel. And you can ask yourself why that is. Mad Mo Hewer, I agree. Free Palestine, I agree. Yeah, the landlord story, Lodain, is awful. It's one of the worst things. And it was amazing looking at some of the footage from there was like a community, I don't know if it was a funeral or some kind of a community coming together in the wake of that, and a White House spokesperson showed up and they were getting like booed. Justifiably. Like people, that's what I've been pointing out. It's like this is really becoming a turning point for a lot of people with the Democratic Party. By the way, I'll plug the Insurgents podcast that we did yesterday, where I talked about some of this stuff. We had a guest cancel at the last minute, so it's just a conversation between me and Jordan. But I was pretty happy with. I really wanted to talk a little bit about the historical context we've been talking about here, the cycle of violence of colonialism, and I think I did a pretty good job of kind of providing that historical context and talking about this violence in kind of in a productive way. That wasn't just like condemn, we must condemn, that I was really able to talk about that. Yeah, I think I was successful in laying that out for people, laying out that argument. So I hope that was helpful for some people that got a chance to listen to that. Yeah, Kijiji, I can't even talk about it. It's awful. It's something to hear you be gentle on there. I've got to there's people that I need to hold their hand. That's all. You need a gentle little push. That's all. That's all I tried to do sometimes.
The wife said that her husband was taken over by these ideas because of watching right-wing media. The challenge here when we talk about anti-Semitism in the same conversation we're talking about
it's a gentle little push into Stalinism
is that for years those who want to shut down criticism of Israel, advocacy for Palestinian rights, have argued that it is a form of anti-Semitism.
Right.
And throughout even the Trump era, when we did have actual surging anti-Semitism coming from, fascists and Nazis, right?
Yeah,
classic anti-Semitism. People who the people who are supposed to be taken care of and fighting anti-Semitism always made sure to say and left and the right, as if there's some equivalence. Because when we start talking about anti-Semitism, the argument that I've made for years is if you are blaming all Jews for the actions of Israel, that is anti-Semitic. At the same time, defenders of Israel are saying, if you do not recognize that defense of Palestinians is criticism of Jews, that Jews in Israel for this context are indistinguishable, that's anti-Semitism. And I worry with the incredible surging violence that we're seeing right
Absolutely.
now as
She's great.
The organized Jewish community, the government of Israel, the government of the United States frames this explicitly as attacks on Jews, that disagreeing with what Israel is doing in Gaza is an attack on the Jewish people. I worry that there's going to be blowback. Absolutely. That isn't because the fight for Palestinian rights is intrinsically anti-Semitic. It's because those who want to defend Israel from criticism are insisting that you cannot distinguish between Jews and Israel. That worries me tremendously.
It's interesting, Nora, because it seems that the West, particularly dominant Western nations, have one disposition about human rights violations, about illegal actions for most countries. And then when it comes to Palestine, there seems to be an exception. I'll give you an example. Since the October 7th attack by Hamas, a majority of Western powers have stood in support of Israel. Now, I want to juxtapose that to 2022, when the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, gave a speech calling out Russia's targeting of Ukrainian civilians. Let's have a listen.
Targeted attacks on civilian infrastructure with a clear aim to cut off.
I'm from Libya. It's sad how Western media taking oppressor side even after they see war crimes being committed in front of their eyes. I mean, Libya is a good example, Mad Mo Hewer, of the absolute evil of Western imperialism and the United States government. The idea that people keep thinking that the United States government has people's best interests in mind or that they care about human rights. or democracy. Libya should prove to anyone, like what happened to Libya, should prove to anyone that they don't actually have these values. But meanwhile, they tried to give Syria the exact same treatment, and most of the people fell for all the exact same stories about human rights. And it's like I'm against the interventionism or imperialism, but we got to do something. We got to fund these Al Qaeda guys in Syria and have a proxy war there because we care so much about human rights. We got to keep funding these Ukrainian militias because we care so much about human rights. We got to keep funding Israel because we cared so much about human rights. It's like, after a certain point, you have to stop believing this nonstop stream of bullshit that you're being fed. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for people that still, like, to this day, are like, oh, you don't agree with American intervention in Syria? What are you, some kind of Assadist? It's like, you don't have to be Assadist to see what the United States did to Libya and be like, I think that is bad. I think it's bad to do that to Libya, and I think it would be bad for everybody to do the same thing, to give the same treatment to Syria. That, to me, that shouldn't be a controversial statement. But in the West, it somehow still is controversial because you have to ignore recent history. You have to completely forget about basic recent history anytime you talk about these subjects.
Men, women, children, of water, electricity, and heating, with the winter coming, these are acts of pure terror. And we have to call it as such.
They're saying these attacks, cutting off electricity, all this stuff is inexcusable, it's illegal, et cetera, and yet these very same nations, these very same forces who have stood up when it was Russia, Ukraine, are now not just complicit in their silence, they are actively supporting Israel's response.
I think in this moment we have to contend with the fact that we are not in a post-colonial reality, but the colonialism continues to shape our lives. It's in the same way that genocide was practiced very much before it was proscribed in 1949, but it was...
America sees wars as a business to sell more weapons. Exactly. And that's exactly why Joe Biden just announced this aid package to both Israel and Ukraine. Because that's what America's about. That's basically the fundamental building block of the entire economy, is promoting war and selling weapons. And that's why I support China's vision for geopolitics. And I welcome China's emergence as a major player in the geopolitical world. Because they don't have the same vision. They promote sovereignty. They promote mutual benefit, development. These things that we are supposed to pretend to care about, they're actually like walking the walk when it comes to that. All we care about is more war, more violence, more arms transfers, more arms sales. That's the thing when it comes to Ukraine. Like, you see, it's linked now, like it's right in front of you. They're sending billions of dollars to Israel for weapons. They're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine for weapons. Rob, how can you not support Ukraine? Don't you know that Putin is bad? Don't you know that the invasion has been terrible and violent and that bad things have happened? How can you not support Ukraine? That's why. Because Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, other countries around the world, the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, these are proxy states. These are client states of the Anglo-American Empire. And if you're an anti-imperialist, there's one big empire that controls and dominates our whole world. It's called the rules-based international order. It's a global criminal cartel of all of the formerly colonial, predominantly white Western countries. The sicko states. Thank you. And they use Ukrainians, they use Israelis to promote their own interests. And if you're anti-imperialist, you must oppose that. No matter what bad guys on the other side. Oh, you support Putin. Oh, you support Hamas. Oh, you support Assad. Oh, you support Gaddafi. Oh, you support Saddam Hussein. Oh, you support the Taliban. This shit doesn't work anymore. This argument doesn't work anymore. I don't care who's on the other side. You have to oppose the primary empire that has controlled and dominated our whole world for our entire lives. This empire that's in the process of collapsing. You're supporting Ho Chi Minh. In that case, that would be true. I do support Ho Chi Minh. And the Kim family in DPRK, of course. Oh, you're upset. That's right. That's the thing. This doesn't work. This doesn't work on me anymore. I don't care. I don't care when people say, "Oh, you support this, you support that, you support this bad guy." This shit just doesn't work on me anymore. And I encourage everyone to try and adopt the same mentality. We know who the bad guys are, and we're not going to let them confuse us about who the bad guys are. We're not going to let their propaganda confuse us anymore, even in moments when it becomes difficult.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ben, thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate that. But China and Russia are doing their own imperialism. I'm against it all. Ugh. They hate it when you laugh in their faces because they're used to this working, right, Matt? Like they're used to being able to just instantly have like a thought terminating statement. Oh, do you support Putin? And you support Stalin? That's the old Red Scare version of it, right? And they're used to American leftists being like, well, no, and just like start crying because they can't defend their own position. They're used to getting their way using that kind of argument. But when they encounter someone like us, right, it doesn't work on us anymore. And it confuses and enrages them. Kim Il-sung had so much more swag than Kim Jong-un. No, very sad. I think Kim Jong-un has swag. I mean, Kim Il-sung also was a swaggy guy. I think Kim Jong-un does have swag, though. They crumble when social pressure fails as a tactic because critical thinking is something they have to actively avoid to maintain their worldview. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. But let me continue this.
Was never recognized when it was committed by colonial powers against brown and black peoples, but it becomes recognized when it was practiced within Europe's borders. There is a continuing colonial reality that is shaping how Palestinians have been excluded even from the juridical category of the civilian, one that echoes American jurists in their genocidal warfare against Native Americans who have articulated that Native Americans are savages and to whom the laws of war, even dating back to the Lieber Code, the first articulation of humanitarian law during the Civil War, excluded Native Americans from the category of civilians that made their massacre plausible.
I'd love to shoot some hoops with Kim Jong-un as well.
We need to remember we are still existing in that colonial reality.
He's a big guy, too. He can go down in the post. He can bring you down to the post and bang around down there. Get that big stance, that wide stance. Post.
One in which these former colonial powers, and in some cases ongoing colonial powers, have excluded Palestinians from this category and have found it far easier and more morally compatible with their lack of principle to support Israel in genocidal warfare than it has been to support Palestinians in an ongoing decolonization struggle.
Haggai, how is international support being viewed inside of Israel from these various countries, but particularly the United States?
Well, it's seen as exactly what it is, a green light to do whatever this government wants to do. It's both international support, of course, the U.S. with its aircraft carriers and fleet moored just outside of Israel. Is a significant part of that. The international support is a part of that. And picking up on what Laura was saying, you can see these, very heartfelt speeches by President Biden saying, that he wants to reassure Israelis of their safety and security and that they have a future and they have allies. And that's beautiful. That's great. But at the same time, you realize that what that means is that he's not saying the same things to Palestinians. He's not telling the dozens of Palestinian families that were wiped out in Gaza, he's not telling their relatives, your lives matter, and we want to protect you as well.
I think he's been
We're
for generations about
their lives matter, and they can do to you whatever they want. That is what Israel.
I think that's fair. Honestly, I have the hockey haircut too now as well, so it really looks like I play hockey now, but I don't. I'm a hooper.
Israelis are picking up from this. I think that is what Biden means, and that's how it's being utilized.
So I want you all to give me your best insights. What are the chances of a ceasefire? Nora, I'll start with you.
I just want to start by saying that before I got onto this program, I asked, several people to help me just search for the names of the Palestinians who were massacred in the Al Ahli hospital. I think that there has been part of the dehumanization project, aside from the fact that we're getting clear that there's no principle that all civilian life is sacred. But aside from that, the fact that Palestinian death toll is just shared with us in astonishing numbers, in ways that are actually dehumanizing Palestinians, because we are not getting the extent of pain for each life lost. We are not getting the extent of pain of all the beloveds and the kin that are watching this and being traumatized, of the babies who are left without any family around them, who are to wake up to a world orphaned and abandoned by the world that is blaming them for their own misery and only proposing to them that we're going to keep you in tighter cages in order to resolve this issue. So here I just want to emphasize to an audience watching, at what number will trigger the horror that should have been triggered already of Palestinian death? Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? We have been asking this question since the debilitating siege was imposed on the Gaza Strip. And so the fact that we can't see that number within any plain sight speaks the deep dehumanization, the racial discourse, the colonial discourse that has basically primed audiences to accept Palestinian death and slow death as tragic but necessary, which is obscuring the fact, back to your question, Mark, where is the ceasefire, regardless of this red herring of who bombed the hospital. There should be an unequivocal call, because of the horror and the atrocity, for an immediate ceasefire. Israel has done enough. It killed 16 paramedics. It has denied electricity to hospitals where babies cannot survive in incubators because of a lack of electricity. It has cut off water. It has carbon-bombed humanitarian convoys that are trying to travel to the south. That's not enough, that now it becomes necessary to debate whether or not this was actually an Israeli airstrike. If there is really the fog of war is making everything unclear, then lift the fog and impose an immediate ceasefire. Why did the U.S. veto that resolution in the Security Council proposed by Brazil? So this is where we're at, and I urge all viewers that at this point, a ceasefire is the bare minimum and absolutely necessary.
Bare minimum and absolutely necessary, Nora Ereket says. Haggai, is it likely?
I'm afraid not. I completely agree with Nora. It is necessary. I think a ceasefire, release of the civilian captives that Hamas is holding, and then moving on to negotiations to first release the rest of the prisoners of war on both sides. All of this is absolutely necessary, paving the way for future negotiations as well. It is highly unlikely, if there was any hope at all of a Biden visit, putting limits on Israel's use of force, saying, forget it, ground invasion. There's been enough death, enough suffering. You need to stop now. We've actually seen the opposite, and therefore it is quite likely now that Israel will go ahead with a planned ground invasion. That could take days, that could take weeks, and a ceasefire seems further away now than it did for the past week or so.
Is that your sense too, Larry?
So I'm going to give a slightly longer answer as well. As someone who's been watching the Israeli political narrative evolve over decades, and the growing normalization of the far right Kahanist narrative. This is essentially the narrative which says Palestinians, this is our land, the Palestinians should never have been here, they are obstacles to our state, they must be removed. And that is where the mainstream is, I think, very much in Israel today, where you see with this government. There are officials within this Israeli government that are talking very clearly about taking land, about cutting the size of the Gaza Strip. When you tell 1 million people to leave half the Gaza Strip, I think of South Lebanon. Israel has a military doctrine which says we fight people on their land, not ours. It is inconceivable to me that Israel will stop this before they have laid the groundwork for them to stay permanently in a depopulated part of Gaza. You have language about trying to get humanitarian corridors, humanitarian is in quotes here, out of Gaza into the Sinai. People need to think about what that means. That is basically talking about setting up the equivalent of prison camps for Palestinians in the desert. And maybe they'll be able to bribe Sisi into doing that. But that's the goal here. I don't think you're going to get a ceasefire until Israel has accomplished whatever goals they've decided. I don't think their end game is explicitly clear. And the last thing I want to say, when we say a ceasefire is the bare minimum, let's be clear. Based on what is already done, if there was a ceasefire today, the humanitarian catastrophe that has been caused in Gaza will take years, just on a humanitarian basis, to recover from. So ceasefire is not the end of the game, but my God, it is a bare minimum if you have any sense of humanity.
Really good point. That's also something that I tried to talk about last night. Jordan from the Insurgents has actually set up this whole website thing, ceasefiretoday.com, which allows people, I think mostly Americans, it's like a handy way for people to email Congress, email your senators. There's a petition, there's a protest, there's phone bankings, there's all kinds of like resources. And I think it's really cool that he did that. Although Dane's already got it. But it's the thing I pointed out as well last night, that it's like there does need to be a ceasefire because of the number of people that are dying. I think we can agree on that. But also, I don't think there's that much of a desire on the part of Palestinian people to just go back to the everyday, regular status quo violence of the occupation and apartheid. A ceasefire is a step one to stop the mass death that's happening right now. But ultimately, the occupation has to end. I mean, the idea of just having, let's just have a ceasefire so everything can go back to normal, I don't think that's really a solution either. There does need to be a ceasefire, but the entire occupation needs to be dismantled. And who is this? This was executive director of 972 magazine, Hagai Matar. Was that who it was? Oh no, that's Laura Friedman. She's president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. She was fantastic. She was really great. I didn't really watch last night the Biden Oval Office speech. Should we look at that? Oh, we just shared that. Was that Genghis Khan? Yeah. We can look. This is a crazy story. This is an absolutely crazy story. The libs were like, wow, what a great speech. Even Fox News loved it. Even Fox News loved our ongoing support for genocide. Yeah, that's the fucking problem, guys. Remember the same people that were like, Bernie Sanders went and talked to Fox News. He's going on Fox News. He's legitimizing them. He's amplifying them. Talking about healthcare on Fox News. And then when Fox News is like, I think the liberal Democratic president endorsing endless genocide is good. And these people are like, this shows that we're winning. This shows that we're right. These are not the smartest people. The UN standing with Israel, I don't even think if a ceasefire is possible. Well, I wouldn't say the UN is standing with Israel, but the thing is, the UN, despite whatever noble intentions went behind the creation of the UN or the important role that the UN can play, the UN can never be legitimate as long as it's being used as an arm of American or Western imperialism. When the United States has full veto power and they have this permanent Security Council seat, the UN can't do what it's supposed to do. It's being wielded and weaponized as an arm of U.S. imperialism. So it's not legitimate as long as the U.S. has this full control and veto power. then it's just an arm of, it's vibes. It's a debate club. It's a way certain countries can air certain grievances. It's a way to like have people talk about these things, but it has no actual power or legitimacy to rein in the true violent, murderous, destructive power that we live under, which is the United States of America. It has zero power to do anything to stop that. So I like the idea of the UN, and maybe one day the UN could be a sort of legitimate international body that has some kind of ability to go after who it needs to go after. But when it's being used as an arm of US imperialism, then it's not legitimate. Yeah, you can go talk, but everyone you're trying to address will just leave. Yeah. Move the UN to Shanghai, move the ICC to Hanoi. Now we're talking. What do you let this man cook? Let this person cook, okay? You're cooking. This is a crazy story. Because you actually have in Israel family, like all this, release the hostages. Hamas must release the hostages. And there's actually families of these hostages, which is a very brave position to take. And I have a huge amount of admiration for these Israeli families who are connected to someone that's been taken hostage, that are trying to talk to Netanyahu and talk to the government and say, like, stop this. Stop using my wife, my mother, my grandmother, my daughter, my son, whoever. Stop using them to justify this kind of violence. And listen what happened with Netanyahu. So in his last statement to the nation on Saturday evening, Netanyahu claimed to have spoken to those who lost their loved ones whose fate is unknown. But no actual family member of a hostage was identified as having spoken to him. On Sunday, he finally met a group of representatives from the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, when suddenly a man who claimed to also be a relative of a hostage entered the meeting and started praising the prime minister and saying he trusted any decision he makes. It has since emerged that the man is a far-right activist with ties to members of the Netanyahu family, but no known ties to the hostages. The man's wife, meanwhile, had organized a counter-protest outside the IDF headquarters opposite the family's vigil. Some of the protesters screamed abuse at the forum members. Like, just a cartoonishly evil. You've got families. For all they're using, like, not only do they weaponize like Jewish trauma of the Holocaust, which is horrifying in and of itself, weaponizing that pain and violence to engage in the exact kind of like fascism and mass murder and dehumanization to exploit and take land away and kill and maim another group of people. That in and of itself is evil. And now you're like weaponizing the pain of these families who are going through the situation where their family members been taken hostage, weaponizing that to justify your ongoing second Nakba, your ongoing genocide in Palestine. And then when these people try to talk to you to say, please stop doing this, you've got some guy barging into the meeting going like, I love Netanyahu, please keep doing genocide, who's not even part of one of these families. Like, that is absolutely cartoonishly evil. It makes you wonder if this whole thing was really an intelligence failure. And I don't even think that should be, is that even a hot take at this point, to think this is like a 9/11 kind of situation where they allowed things to happen because they were going to then plan to use this as pretext to carry out their genocidal program that they had in mind already? Like, isn't this like, it's not even controversial to basically say that at this point, right? They did start putting it in 9/11 terms right away. It's like 5 9/11s. It's like 11 9/11s. It's like 15 9/11s. Like, what the fuck? It's the weirdest way to like count. Yeah, it's a lukewarm take. It's not even barely a warm take, you know? It's a 7/11s. Yeah, no, like we were saying, it's like this has been what they wanted all along. They wanted a second Nakba. They wanted to finish the job of the 1948 war. They want to ethnically cleanse Israel. Like we keep saying, oh, we need a two-state solution. The people that control the Israeli government, they're not interested in a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, Israel, that they control, that is completely ethnically cleansed of Palestinians, and then they want to go beyond that to greater Israel, going into Jordan and these other places, Lebanon and Syria. That's what they want. They're not interested in this two-state solution, and this has always been their kind of like end game. And they use this incident to launch that. 9/11 is what I call my bathroom when Lucid takes a dump. Jeez. You're airing out some family issues there. I think you got to have internal discussions about that. I also want a one-state solution. I agree. I think that's the only solution that's left on the table. It's one thing that I talked about with Abby Martin when I spoke to Abby Martin like years ago now. I spoke to her in like 2018 or 2019 on my podcast. And she will be coming on this show in the next couple of months. I talked to her recently again. I'm in touch with her like a couple times a year to try and sort this out. I will make it happen. But it's one thing I talked about with her years ago. Like there's no more two-state solution. It's just not going to happen. It's impossible now. It's impossible because of these decades of settlements. You know, it's not going to work. There's going to be
You've just become an elite
one-state solution
of the friendship triangle,
where everyone can live together and get along and have equal democratic rights. And if there's Israelis that are like, well, in such a situation, I'd be under threat, and I've been so genocidal for so long and have treated people with such cruelty for so long that I'm not going to be safe. Well, if that's how they feel, then they should leave. Jameson, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. I very, very much appreciate, Jameson, all the support. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And I also appreciate being part of your Plex server. Having access to TV series such as Columbo and Cheers on there.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
1 9/11? No. 2 9/11s? Nope. 3 9/11s? Worse. 911 9/11s. You're getting there. Thank you, Gold Greek. Biden did a statement like this the other day too. Like there's every time they try to use the 9/11 like measuring stick, it's a different number of 9/11s. Where's the clip of Biden saying it? Said it was like 15 9/11s, Jack. It was like 15 9/11s. I would call 911 if I saw a 9/11. By the way, Twitter's deleting and shadow banning comments critical of Israel. I'm not surprised by that. I mean, I've had a bunch of tweets that have gone pretty viral over the last couple of weeks about this. So, one reason why I think there's still value in the platform. Here's this CNN clip, and again, this is me reaping, this is me sowing kind of situation, isn't it? Like this is how people from CNN are being talked to. Okay, so this is in the West Bank. Sarah Sidner, who repeated the like beheaded babies claim on air on CNN.
Journalists gathered here because this is kind of where the classic happens. So, all right. We're going to have to...
You are genocide supporters.
Okay,
you are not welcome here. Genocide supporters. Fuck CNN. Fuck CNN.
Many are saying this. This is what you get. I mean, they are genocide supporters. The whole U.S. media is complicit in genocide in Palestine.
All right. I want to let me just that CNN has been reporting the story. You hear that, but this is we're fine. But what you are seeing,
They are genocide supporters.
the heightened fear, anger, frustration with what's happening. Journalists.
You see, saw that same thing a couple months back. Remember when the BBC journalist was accosted by people in China? He's trying to do some report in China, and then that, of course, gets turned into like China hostile to free media or whatever. It's like, no, they just don't like you because they see the kind of shit that BBC says about China and the lies that they spread. And lo and behold, they're not really that happy to see you when you go and show up in their country. They're like, fuck you, we don't like you, go away. You're literally using your platform to accuse us of genocide and accuse us of all this stuff. And in this case, they're abetting a genocide. That's how much the media cares about genocide. They accuse China of genocide, and then when Israel does genocide, they're like, this is good, actually. We like this. It's actually, like, not to bring up this comparison too much, but it is really laughable, all the Uyghur genocide stuff now, especially in relation to what we're seeing currently. Accusing China of doing genocide in Xinjiang. And you can look at clips of like Urumqi and look at the huge billions of dollars that are being poured into Urumqi and different areas in this major economic center, building huge new infrastructure projects, like lifting living standards for everybody that lives there. The Uyghurs, Han Chinese, all the other different ethnic groups that are represented in that region, lifting living standards for everyone there. Protecting culture, protecting people's religious beliefs and their culture, but also saying like, hey, if you're going to take your culture and your religious beliefs and start doing terrorist attacks, we have an issue with that. And we're going to crack down on that kind of sentiment, but we're also going to couple that with huge investment, development, education, vocational training, and these kind of things. And we have all of the exact countries that support Israel saying like, this is genocide. We need to stand up. We need to stand up for these people as they're being genocided like this. And then when there's an actual genocide going on, a literal genocide, ethnic cleansing, which is not happening in Xinjiang, ethnic cleansing, a bombing campaign where they killed thousands of people, over 1,000 children, and the very same people are like, this is good, actually. No, they're right to do this. They have a right to defend themselves. Like, fuck off at this point. It's just ridiculous. The idea that these are remotely comparable in any way. Overreacting to much more terrorism than the U.S. has ever had to do by temporarily establishing a police state is genocide. Look up the definition. Yeah. Can you link the video? Yes, I can. And yeah, like people are pointing out, and I mentioned earlier, that's Sarah Sidner who repeated this like decapitated babies claim. Look at this woman in the back too. You see sometimes you can't see my cursor, but the woman there, like it says above Israel at war, her face is great too. That's an ice cold stare to this CNN journalist. Did you see the confrontation at Rafah to Western journalists? I heard about it, Gald Greek or Dimitri, but I don't know if I have the clip saved. I still predict there'll be no full ground invasion, but isn't that what they're doing right now, though? Like, I get that they seem to be kind of intimidated by it, and it's hasn't totally kicked off yet, but they announced it. They announced it yesterday. Oh, thank you, Dimitri.
your condemnation? Where's your channel covering this? Cover this. Say the truth. We understand you're an employee. You're just a puppet. You're just a mouthpiece. Come talk to me like a human being. Come talk to me like a human being. Thank you. I understand you have your foreign policy. No, I've heard you.
Barolitic says they don't have enough missiles to do the Hirsch plan, so I don't know what they're going to do, but maybe that's what this big, like they're just getting a new $11 billion, which is primarily military. So maybe that's what that is, right? That's what they're announcing, this big new aid package, which will probably pass. The Senate just passed a pro-Israel resolution completely unanimously. Good to know they can still agree on something down there in Washington. They can work together sometimes when it comes to unanimously supporting Israel's permanent right to do genocide. They agree with him. They agree with themselves. Can they physically produce the arms fast enough? Yeah, and you've got to continue arming Ukraine as well. I don't know. Yeah, and Hezbollah is the wild card, and that's what I've been wondering. If they do go ahead with this ground invasion, does Hezbollah get involved at that point? And what happens at that point? That seems to be anybody's guess. It's a bit of a, it's a bit of a question. Yeah, and sending 100 mil to Palestine. It's almost insulting, isn't it? While we're sending Israel $11 billion and sending them all the weapons and giving them full support to engage in this mass murder, ethnic cleansing campaign, we're also going to send 100 million to Palestinians for humanitarian aid, while also voting at the UN to not let in the humanitarian aid. No, that's great. That's really good stuff. Same lady with subtitles. Yeah, that could be good as well. Watch the rest of that.
Where's your channel, human being? Cover this. Say the truth. We understand you're an employee. I'm just a puppet. You're just about. I've heard. Come talk to me like a human being. Come talk to me like. I understand you have your foreign policy. I understand you have your foreign policy. I understand you represent your. I've heard you. But that I've heard you. You're a person. Explain. I understand you have your customized democracy. I understand you represent. Watching and occupying that, and they're watching. You're a person. Explain your side. Your customized representation of and now they're watching our channel, and we're watching the results of your side. Say the truth. Of your representation of they're just about these. Come talk to me like a human being. Come talk to me like a human being. Thank you.
Sorry.
I understand you have your foreign policy. No, I've heard you.
Where is that?
I've heard you. You hear me. I understand you have your foreign policy. I understand you speak for your government.
Jesus. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It started playing in another tab there. It was John. Thanks, John. Thanks, John. A lot of tabs. John, I'm sorry I missed Evil Dead 2. I really wanted to watch Evil Dead 2 with you guys, and I fucked it up. I hope those Evil Dead sessions have been going well, though. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I like the whole idea. Like, where's your condemnation? We must condemn Hamas. We must condemn. You fucking condemn. You're the ones that are like setting the table for genocide going on right now. Why do you condemn that? I agree. Genocide with a land acknowledgement before it. And I think that's something clarifying for me, like that's what Israel will be if this is successful. Like 100 years from now, if this ethnic cleansing project was successful, that's what it would be, right? We're going to do the Palestinian land acknowledgement before all our sports games and stuff.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Condemn these nuts. Oh my. Axe Cunningham, thanks for 7 months tier 1. Weird condemning people in a concentration camp. And I found it really, really valuable. And this is something I talked about on the podcast yesterday. Norm Finkelstein's analogy about the Nat Turner slave uprising and what white abolitionists were saying about that at the time. I thought that was really, really interesting and really helpful to kind of like clarify. Someone's coming in hot with some ill-timed and completely off-topic jokes about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, who, as you know, we support on this channel. I get that might not be clear to everybody. Just in case anyone's confused about this, though, I, Rob Rousseau, and this community fully support the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and we don't take that kind of flippant comments. We don't take those kind of flippant comments about our friends and comrades in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Take a time out and watch Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang. Okay? Watch Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang on YouTube, and you can come back. Let's see, what else do I have here to look at today? On that note, there's this. This isn't we talk about bad news all the time. It's not all bad. It's not all bad news. Look at this. Russia and North Korean relations have reached strategic level. Good for them. I'm glad to hear that. We certainly shall not be critical of a country we slaughtered in a war within the Imperial Accord. No, we're not. Because we're not chauvinists. Has Kim Jong-un weighed in on Palestine? I don't think I've seen anything official. Yes, actually, and as usual, they did not miss. DPRK does not miss when it comes to foreign policy. Like I've been saying, they don't take, like China has, like it or not, China has this policy of like non-interference, trying to restore the status quo, not kind of interfering too much, not taking these big, bold stances. DPRK is just like, no, we will take big, bold stances. North Korea blames Israel. This is from the Hindustan Times. North Korea blames Israel for causing bloodshed in Gaza. North Korean state media has often argued against Western views, especially of the United States on international issues, and good for them. North Korean state media on Tuesday blamed Israel for causing bloodshed in Gaza, weighing in on the military clashes between Israel and the Islamist group Hamas for the first time. I'd like to see the clip, actually. Rodong Sinmun, a ruling Workers' Party mouthpiece, published a brief article on the conflict and casualties, citing foreign media. The international community claims that this clash was the result of Israel's constant criminal acts against the Palestinian people, and that the fundamental way out is to build an independent Palestinian state. I think there's a better news story of it, but what side do you think China would take? I mean, they would be with Russia, probably. Yeah, I mean, they've been pretty clear about still trying to promote a two-state solution based on the 67 borders. Bob, I was not looking for your channel and found your stream by chance, but I like your personality. You're a sincere, honest man, and I thank you for your interest in clarifying the Palestinian issue. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. Please keep coming back to the stream. Happy to have you part of the community. Okay, calling me Rob Bob was kind of funny. I kind of liked it, actually. I kind of liked it. But yeah, China's stance seems to be very like non-confrontational. I know there's Chinese companies that do business with Israel, which is, we can have criticisms over that. They do have this policy, whether you like it or not, to respect sovereignty, but they've also been very clear in condemning Israel's actions, advocating for a ceasefire, advocating for a two-state solution, whether that's still possible. I know I saw Bobbert, if you're feeling nasty. I saw actually a really interesting segment about Chinese state media, like not CGTN, but like their actual like Chinese state media in Mandarin. And it was kind of fascinating because it was showing like these anchors, and it was all, the backdrop was all the destruction of Gaza. And it was like a heavily focus on the crimes of the Israeli government in Gaza. So, and we've seen as well, despite the kind of conciliatory tone of the government, or the non-confrontational tone of the government, Chinese people like on social media are rabidly in support of Palestinians to like a comical degree. We can watch this, but we did watch all the debunking of the hospital stuff yesterday. I didn't see the Channel 4 one. I watched the Al Jazeera one, but apparently the Channel 4 one is good as well. For some reason, people say Putin is being too measured when he called the situation Stalingrad. I think that's a bit to the point. It is. He's also pretty buddy-buddy with Netanyahu. I don't think we need to give Putin too much credit on that, but he's been probably better talking about it than most Western leaders. And of course, Putin is bad, but we can acknowledge if he's so bad, I think maybe our Western leaders could maybe be more forceful about it then. We watched some of the Piers Morgan, Bassem Youssef interview. We didn't watch the whole thing. This is new and really conclusive. Okay, well, we can take a look at this. I guess my point was just that we should debunk this. I think this is good, but like, I do think there becomes a problem when we fixate on debunking Israel's lies, and then it allows all the overt massacres that they're doing to just kind of continue, which they don't even denounce or deny. But I'm interested in watching this new one as well. I mean, we know that they were lying, like, because we're understand the situation and we have two eyes. We understand the basic Occam's razor solution that the country that is currently dropping 6,000 bombs on Gaza, that has repeatedly targeted civilians, that has repeatedly targeted hospitals, that targeted this exact hospital before, that called this hospital and tried to evacuate them, that constantly lies every single time they commit this unspeakable atrocity that ignites this kind of international outcry. I think it's just safe to assume that they're responsible for this bombing. I don't think it's even like that. We should debunk this. We should look at this, but like, we don't need to play this game where we say, some say this and some say this. We know what happened, right? We know. 100% it's a distraction tactic on the face of it. They want the controversy to be, I bet, a single criminal act once they very mandate this criminal. Yeah, exactly. And it's a form of propaganda, right? Just flooding the discourse with all these different conflicting ideas and theories and stuff like that. I was trying to pay attention to this stuff the other day, and I was so fucking like just disoriented and confused by all the different stories that were going on. Yeah, just psyops everywhere. Then the OSINT guys get involved. They had their little parking lot picture. Well, as you can see, I've gone into MS Paint and drawn some red lines on this image that proves conclusively that it wasn't a airstrike. I'm funded by the CIA and weapon arms manufacturing industry, by the way. Not that I disclose that. I'm just a cool anarchist. You know? Anyway, I think we all know what happened with this hospital bombing, but we should take a look at this clip anyways. Yeah, Polyev is trying to make Trudeau accept the Israel narrative. I have a clip for that queued up next, actually, so we can do that next. The CIA said that that's what happens. Why isn't Trudeau agreeing with it?
It derailed Joe Biden's Middle East visit. It started a raging global debate. The explosion at the hospital in Gaza City on Tuesday night and its bloody aftermath. Tonight, audio and photographic analysis sheds new light on what happened. First, the audio analysis. This comes from a consortium of prominent NGOs specializing in human rights investigations.
Good Lord.
Earshot in
Abbott and Costello ass Hamas guys on that intercepted phone call.
Investigators have analyzed two aspects of the blast which killed so many.
Yeah, we know Hamas
Christian
doesn't have
hospital.
missiles like this. If they had missiles like this, the Iron Dome wouldn't actually work. The Iron Dome only works because it's able to stop missiles that people make in their garage.
First, Doppler effect sound analysis of the missile tracking to the hospital that night.
It's the compression of sound waves as a moving object is accelerating towards you, and that object is emitting sound, and then as it's moving away, that frequency decreases, that pitch decreases.
That analysis produced this mapping. The red line is where the Israelis said the missile was fired from by, they say, Islamic Jihad from within southwestern Gaza. But this new Doppler sound mapping analysis concludes that the missile came from a variety of possible firing points, the blue arrows, all east of the hospital, not west, as the IDF claimed.
Like I find this video convincing too. I find the Al Jazeera it's the second time I've said that today. I found the Al Jazeera video convincing as well, but I didn't need to be convinced also. I think we should look at it, but like I was convinced as soon as I heard the hospital was bombed. Israel did the bombing. Pretty easy stuff. I do think it's still important to look at this, but I didn't need convincing.
That map arose from this Doppler mapping of the
to talk you through all this.
$4 Tan, thanks for the gifted sub. Very kind of you, $4 Tan, and thank you also, Tremblay Gill, for the Prime sub, brand new community member. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I always love to see new community members showing up. Thanks.
Audio of the missile flying to impact at the hospital. And that sound recorded by a geolocated
Israel would never do the thing that they do often.
Southeast of the hospital. The second aspect examined is the tape release.
Watch me figure this one out with one easy step. You just point to the country doing the genocide. It's really not that complicated, you know? That's why I felt so insane that night when so many people were doing these mental gymnastics to be like, well, we don't know. Maybe let's not make accusations before we know the full facts. It's like, fuck off. Jesus Christ. You never have this kind of like, well, let's wait and see for the facts unless we're talking about Israel. Any other time, a bunch of leftists buckled. I saw that. I saw it. Believe me, it was very depressing. When everyone was starting to doubt Relic, seriously, me too. I was like, I feel like I am losing my goddamn mind right now. It was very depressing.
Released by the Israeli Defense Forces. The IDF says it is two Hamas operatives discussing how an Islamic Jihad missile fired from in Gaza malfunctioned, causing the hospital explosion. 2 nights ago, we reported that Arab-speaking experts raised questions about the tone and language of this tape.
You can have good old Rob to
the forensic sound analysis states.
I keep interrupting this video. Burgles, thank you for the tier 1 sub. A couple new community members. That's very exciting. Thank you, Burgles. I really appreciate it. And again, I think it's good to do this kind of like audio analysis, but it's like you just look at the clip that they're using to prove that Hamas or whoever was behind this attack. And it's like these fucking clowns being like, hey, we love doing terrorism. Oh, did you know that we accidentally bombed that hospital? What? We did? Yeah, we were firing missiles from near the hospital and we blew it up. It's like, that's all the analysis I need. You know, I'm glad that we can do this. You know, but it's like, I don't really need this. I like, as soon as they put out that clip, I was like, yeah, it's for sure made up. No way, that was us? Yeah, like that's for sure how these terrorism guys talk. I think the phone call was clearer than 90% of leftist podcasts. You know, I'm not a big terrorism expert. My understanding, though, when you are engaging in that kind of stuff, you don't want to go on phone calls and be like, hey, what's going on, buddy? Let's do some more terrorism later. Hey, do you know we're doing terrorism from this one specific spot? Yeah, I do. Let's meet up there later and do terrorism. Okay, see you later. It's like, I'm in my understanding of being a terrorist, you want to avoid that kind of stuff. You know? You want to avoid that.
States, quote, this recording is made up of 2 separate channels and demonstrates that these
videotaping this crime spree was our best idea yet.
These 2 independent
want to discuss the specific details about the crime we totally just committed on this bugged phone line?
Workstation, such as Pro Tools, Logic, Audition, have added effects, such as pan control, and recomposed. That being their analysis, what do they then conclude? Though this audio analysis cannot categorically state that the audible dialogue is fake, we can say that the level of manipulation required to edit these 2 voices together disqualifies it as a source of credible evidence. Earshot's opinion is that this recording does not meet the standard required for evidence and should not be used by the media without the clear caveat that it has been digitally manipulated. We turn now to the image analysis carried out by Forensic Architecture at London University. They've conducted 3D resolution.
Sorry, I thought there was no crater, according to our friends at Bellingcat. At the CIA-sponsored Bellingcat, I thought there was no crater. That kind of looks like a crater to me.
Shrapnel splash marks in the hospital car park. Those radial fragmentation marks open towards the southwest, with a shallow channel leading to the crater from the northeast. Their conclusion matches the audio analysis of the missile track.
Where they say people were like, oh, they're lying. They're lying about the casualties. It didn't even hit the hospital. It only hit the parking lot, where there's hundreds of people and families that are sheltering because they have nowhere else to go because of the relentless bombing campaign. I was seeing people like people that are supposed to be like leftist people like saying this kind of thing, and I was just going, what the fuck's going on here? As you can see, I've drawn some red lines on this image of the parking lot, which proves conclusively, like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? The hospital got shelled on the Saturday before. Has it been ruled out that the crater isn't from Saturday? Yeah, I thought an actual part of the hospital got hit, not with like as strong of a missile, but got actually hit. But I'm not sure if it's been ruled out. I'm pretty sure this is confirmed to be the crater from the missile strike on the other day.
Whoever hit the hospital car park that night was fired from the northeast and not from the southwest of Gaza, as the Israeli Defense Forces claim.
We also shared this with an independent weapons and explosives expert that corroborated our understanding of the likely direction as coming from the northeast.
They stress this is a preliminary investigation, and they, like many, call for a full inquiry, unlikely in the heat of raging war. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have so far offered little evidence to back their claims that Israel fired the missile at the hospital that night. Islamic Jihad claimed
Which Biden
to
tweet
have
do
a
you mean?
missile
There's a lot of deranged
but have not
Biden shit
produced
going
it.
out right now.
And the US agrees with Israel's version of events. We've approached the IDF for comment.
I wonder what the IDF's going to say to that. We had an influx of Israelis popping into this chat to try and shut you up. No, actually, we've only had a couple people that have come in here over the last couple of days to try and start some shit. They attacked a church. Well, and that's kind of what I mean too. Like they denied this whole hospital thing, and they tried to turn this into a big obfuscation as well. But then meanwhile, there's all these other atrocities going on that they don't even bother to deny. That they just like admit to. That we all just accept that they did it. I guess that's part of my problem. Yeah, was that. Oh, did they try and blame that on Islamic Jihad as well? Is that their new kind of strategy? I thought they didn't even bother denying that one. Israel noticing more and more that we're immune to propaganda. And it's not just us. Like, this is not working. Did folks see the poll last night that was released about American support for arming Israel? And it's a majority of people do not support it right now, which I have never seen in my life. I have never seen that. Like, this shit is not working. This big mass propaganda campaign, people are rejecting it. No, I've never seen it in my lifetime either. Like, it's really crazy, actually. We would never target a hospital, and we also bombed the same hospital last Saturday. And yes, Abe Cab. We also bombed the same hospital last Saturday, and we repeatedly called them to evacuate the hospital in case it got bombed. We would never dream of doing such a thing. We would never dream of doing the thing that we're currently doing right now for the last 10 days and are going to continue doing. Do you think the prominence of social media has helped people look past the mainstream propaganda? I mean, it must be part of it, but I don't think that's a result. Like, social media is like, it doesn't have that much of a reach. It probably makes a difference, but I do think people are just overall just rejecting this narrative. Like, you can lie to people, but when you see like this power dynamic, even if you have the media supporting it, people are able to like figure out what's going on. I'd like to think anyways. At least that's I don't know. I can't really explain it, but it's pretty incredible the way this is not connecting with people. This narrative. And this is going to kill Biden. Like, this is splitting the whole Democratic Party coalition. There's people quitting. There's like State Department people quitting over this. Ro Khanna's political director just quit because he refused to sign on for a ceasefire. Do you think they're going to go into like Michigan? Is Michigan an important state for the Democratic Party coalition? I'm pretty sure it is. They're going to go into Dearborn, Michigan and try to get these predominantly Muslim and Arab communities to vote for them in the election. Good luck with that. Ro Khanna, the eternal loser. Absolutely pathetic position that he tried to take. I support Israel's right to defend itself, but they must do it in a way that they have never done before previously in any other time in their history. I support the right to defend themselves if it takes the form of this fairy tale event that I just made up in my mind that has never actually happened in real life. You got Warren staffers as well. I support war crimes done in a civil manner. That's most people in the U.S. government. And then there's John Fetterman, who's just like, I like genocide and I think it's good. That's that's progressive hero John Fetterman's position on this. I want more dead kids. That's Fetterman's position. Sick person. Put on a fucking suit, Fetterman. You look like shit. Nipples protruding, very disrespectful. I fought for my right to wear cargo shorts while I'm murdering kids. That's right. My head is minorly feeling better.
It derailed Joe Biden.
Sorry. Yeah, and here you have the Canadian government. And again, Michael Chong, who was one of the subjects of this like foreign intervention campaign when our media accused this man of being like a on like some kind of CCP spy. Now he's out there saying like we must trust the CIA. They said that Israel didn't do the bombing. We've got to listen to them.
The Arab Deputy to Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's closest intelligence allies have already clarified the record. This government has not. So I'm going to give the government an opportunity to correct and clarify the record. Will the government clearly state that the Israel Defense Forces and the State of Israel were not responsible for the explosion at the hospital in Gaza on Tuesday?
This is our party of the everyman. The everyman party. Listen to this. The CIA said they didn't do it. America said they didn't do it. Why wouldn't you say? Like when you think Trudeau is being like too pro-Hamas, like that's insane. When Trudeau has completely co-signed this entire genocidal campaign. Trudeau has unequivocally endorsed this entire project. Our government, our liberal government and Trudeau, they fucking love Israel. They had Melanie Joly over there hanging out with them while all this bomb happened. And they're like, no, you don't support Israel enough. The IDF said they didn't do it and the CIA said they didn't do it. Say that they didn't do it. Like that's what's happening with our political debate. We've got the one party that loves Israel and then the other party being like, why don't you love them even more? That's our marketplace of ideas. And then you have the NDP going like, maybe can we have like a ceasefire? Maybe, I don't know. We condemn every single person that we need to condemn, but maybe can we talk? And they're like, no, you love Hamas. And they're like, nah, we're sorry. We're so sorry. Those are the three parties, the three main parties in Canada. That's how they act.
Mr. Speaker, what happened in Gaza is absolutely devastating. Palestinian civilians, Israeli civilians are equal and must be protected. You've heard the Prime Minister earlier today.
That's not how we act.
Canada and its allies.
We only care when Israeli civilians die. We don't care when Palestinian civilians die every single day, and we pay for it. And we give them endless diplomatic cover for doing this. So you can say that, oh, they're equal. You don't actually act like that.
Working to determine exactly what happened, and Canadians deserve answers.
So a total non-answer there. That's funny. That's the state of our discourse, though. Why don't you like Israel more? What accent is that? It's a Quebecois accent. Melanie Joly, who rumor has it has been having an affair with Trudeau. Not that I engage in any of this kind of like salacious rumor spreading. People are saying that though. People are saying that. Mr. Speaker, he doesn't love Israel enough. What a sad state of affairs that is. I didn't realize that title was off-centered that whole time. Okay. It's the same situation in every single Western parliament. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, Keir Starmer is doing the same thing in the Labour Party right now. He's like, 10 days ago, he's like, I give Israel the unconditional right to murder thousands of people and deny them electricity and food. and medicine, and I think that's good. And now he's like, now that everyone's mad, he's like, I never said that I agreed that they should deny people medicine and food. And it's like, you did, sir. You like this. You like that they're doing this, and you support it. Dr. Maggot, thank you for the $6.90.
Yes, I am donating so that you feel an obligation for my request. Onion article on the bomb is hilarious. PLS read.
It's so funny how the Onion is being treated. Now it's like the Onion is anti-Semitic. Now the Onion supports Putin. The people are losing their fucking minds at the Onion. Israeli military, thank you again, Dr. Maggot. Israeli military reports it was you, the reader, who blew up the hospital. Following conflicting accounts of a horrific attack on a Gaza hospital, officials from the Israeli Defense Forces released a new statement Wednesday that claimed it was you, the reader of this very article, who committed the act of terror. Sources claim to have unequivocal proof that you, dear reader, are solely responsible for carrying out the merciless airstrike that tragically killed hundreds of Gazans in a busy hospital last night. The report cites a near consensus among international security personnel that you alone are guilty of this war crime, and also can confirm that you will pay for this, committing this atrocity if it's the last thing they do. I like how the Onion is doing better coverage of this than like most of our media. I only provided coordinates. I didn't know what they were for. Okay, what else am I looking at here? I mean, this seems to be a good piece about the role that Israel played in creating Hamas in the first place to weaken Palestinian hopes for statehood. Once again, kudos to Democracy Now! For continuing to focus on this issue. They're not always perfect, I don't think, but do a far better job on this than pretty much anyone remotely touching mainstream media. And I think that's important, right? That I mentioned this link between Hamas and Palestinians. Like, this has been deliberately cultivated over generations. Every form of like secular organized protest has been destroyed until Hamas is all that's left. That's been promoted deliberately. And then that's been the way to smear and destroy every single pro-Palestinian solidarity movement. You know, that's what we're saying. People aren't buying it anymore. They're really not.
Still in Gaza from Israel's 14-day bombardment has topped 4,100 as Israel continues to block food, water, and fuel from entering the besieged territory. Over 13,000 Palestinians.
I think we talked a little bit about why the propaganda isn't working, you know, and like we can have questions about that. I think it's the contradictions are becoming so clear. They're becoming so heightened, right? For anyone, even someone that does get their mainstream media, and they see our Applin wouldn't let Jon Stewart run a China bad story, so he quit. Thank you to heroic journalist Jon Stewart. I think the contradictions are becoming so heightened that people are just the propaganda is just not landing. Like, people see when we bullshit about human rights and democracy all day and talk about how we're the leaders of the free world and the defenders of the world and the big fucking heroes. And the Israeli propaganda is incredibly incompetent too. I mean, they're so used to just like having the absolute laziest propaganda be completely swallowed by every mainstream media and every politician. That's like they've gotten lazier and lazier. But I think the contradictions are just so heightened now that even people that are not plugged into this world, this independent media world, the Palestinian solidarity movement, people see that they're not being told the whole story, right? I think even people that are really inclined to pay attention to mainstream media, it's so obviously skewed in this case that they're like, what is going on? What is going on here? I am being lied to. I don't totally know how and why, but I can tell that I am being lied to right now. I think that's a part of it. They did this too soon after Ukraine, so I guess there's a limit to what people will buy. And this whole thing of like, why are we supporting Ukraine And we're like telling Ukraine, we're showing on our media, showing how to make a Molotov cocktail for Ukrainians to throw at tanks. But then we have this like displaced people with nothing, with no military, being kept in a massive concentration camp versus the army that we pay for and fund with billions of dollars every year. And our media is telling us that, like, no, we must support the side with the army. They're the good guys in this. They're fighting terrorism. I think it's so stupid and completely contradictory and indefensible that people are just like saying,
this is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Well, thank you, Central Committee, for the raid. Hello, Central Committee raiders. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining the stream. I'm Rob. Hello. It's me, Rob Rousseau. If you can, please smash the follow button. It costs nothing at all for you to smash the follow button, and it's very, very helpful.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Plunger Man, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Mike from PA, I appreciate the raid. Very kind of you. Always happy to have new folks tuning into the stream and joining the community.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Gald Greek, thank you for the gifted sub. Before we say anything,
you've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Before we say anything, I have to ask you this question. If you want to participate in this chat, if you want to participate in this community.
Wow. Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
If you want to participate in this chat, in this community, you have to answer this question. Do you condemn Hamas? If you want to have anything to do with this community, you must condemn Hamas right now. Or else, no deal. I'm sorry. We must make sure that every single person, whenever we talk about this, when we talk about Israeli apartheid, we talk about the occupation, we talk about Palestine, we must make sure that everyone knows. Everyone knows how much we condemn Hamas. We got to get that out of the way.
Good old Rob first. To talk you through all this.
Yes, I do, because Israel created them. That's actually exactly what we're looking at right now. We're looking at a clip from Democracy Now! About that very subject, about the role that Israel played in creating and promoting Hamas in the first place. So it's good that you mentioned that. I got to say thank you. This is happening very quickly here. One more time, I'll remind though people, please, if you can, smash the follow button. It's really, really very helpful to me when you do that. And thanks everyone for supporting the channel right now. I'm getting a lot of notifications, and I'm trying to say thank you to everyone. Plunger Man, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you, Plunger Man.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this
as well. Calm Like a Tom, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Very, very kind of you, Calm Like a Tom. Thank you for 10 gifted subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you to Gald Greek for the gifted sub, and thank you to Klobocop for the 5 gifted subs as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Part Ian, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Gald Greek, for another gifted sub.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
This is getting a little overwhelming. It's getting a little overwhelming.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's, dare I say, a little rude, actually. It's getting a little frustrating. I'm trying to talk, and now I'm being interrupted.
To talk you through all this.
Thank you, Chameleon Nidus, for the tier 1 sub.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Anon, for 5 gifted subs. I really appreciate that, Anon.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, JNKD, for the gifted sub as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Take a second. You don't need to rush or just start the content you want to cover to talk to us like you were talking before we raided. Well, as I mentioned, we're watching this clip from Democracy Now! who I think have done really good coverage on this.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Who I think have done really solid coverage of this. And
wow.
It's a clip.
Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
It's a clip about...
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
That wow, Rob, seriously, Rob, that's from friend of the show, Vijay Prashad. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Vijay Prashad of the People's Forum and the Tricontinental Institute. An author and historian that I respect a lot. I actually just picked this up today.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
That's him in the notification there. What song are you going to sing? Oh, fuck. I forgot about that. I forgot about the song thing.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob.
Please tell us what brands have not expressed adequate
this.
support for Israel. I have a list. We need to have more brands. We got the NBA, all the NBA teams
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You know, we need more brands. Where are the beverage companies? Where's Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi on this? Where's Gatorade? Where's Powerade? This is important question. Dapper Cat, thank you for some more 2 gifted subs from Dapper Cat. Thank you, Crad Babes, for the 10 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you, Crad Babes. Thank you for that. Thank you to Ludenzi for the 5 gifted subs. Ludenzi, very kind of you. And thank you to Berkeley Power Swimmer for 3 months of tier 1. And thanks Clobocop for the gifted sub. I'm actually 1% of the way. 1% of the way there.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Okay,
oh God,
no, it's not.
Please
it's not
don't tell me Mountain Dew Code Red is full on for Israel.
Alt-Tab Dad, thanks for the 9 months of tier 1. I don't know. I don't know what... We need to check out what Mountain Dew Code Red stance is on this. I think it's actually probably pretty important to take a look at. When is the tub stream? I'm not there yet. I am not there yet.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Love La Angelique, thank you for the tier 1 sub as well. I got a couple new community members, which is exciting. I'm always really happy to have new community members join the stream. Mike's outsourcing his stream promises. Well, I have made this promise to my community that when the day comes that I pass 1,000 subs, I'm not a big time streamer. Okay. I'm not this big time Twitch guy. I have my little community here. People are very supportive and I appreciate it. But I told people that when the day comes that I get to 1,000 subs, I would do a bath stream. Today is not that day though. It's a great day, but it's not that day. We're not there yet. I'm pretty sure I thanked everyone for the subs. Thank you again, folks. So I would like to watch the rest of this content. I have about another hour in the stream left. Let's look at this clip from Democracy Now! This is about the role that Israel played in creating Hamas in the first place.
All this.
Thank you, Anon, for another 5 gifted subs. There's our beautiful Christ-like anonymous
gifters. You can count on me.
gifters.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Amy Goodman is a queen. I mean, we've criticized Democracy Now! Before.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all
but
this.
But I think on this is an issue where they're so much better than anybody.
You can count
even
on
approaching
me.
kind of a mainstream platform
all this.
In the U.S. to talk about this. And so I think it's important to examine these links.
To talk you through all this.
The notifications are making me go crazy as well. Breakthrough News is very good as well. We watch a lot of Breakthrough News here. So yeah, we talked about the way that not only has Hamas been like been nurtured and created by Israel in the first place, but there's been this like concerted project to link Hamas and Palestine, and to have you've seen this pay off now with the kind of discourse that we've seen around any kind of like pro-Palestine protest that has happened, where everything gets treated as being like, oh, you support Hamas. You can't even have a Palestine flag to be like, why do you love Hamas? Why do you want to destroy Israel? It's been a very specific project to make this link in people's minds. And we talked about the links between this Al-Aqsa flood and like 9/11. They were making these comparisons themselves. You even have Joe Biden being like, Jack, this was like 15 9/11s. This was like 15 9/11s. This weird thing where Americans like measure things in 9/11s. It's like an official unit of measurement now. But it is similar in many ways because of the ways that they've used this right away to go full steam ahead with their kind of like total ethnic cleansing project that they've been planning on carrying out for some time now. The second Nakba, finishing the job of the 1948 war, right? Fully ethnically cleansing these lands to create one state, Israel, that they control fully, and completely dismantling all these Arab populations. And it seems like there was certainly, I think it's like we were saying before, barely even a lukewarm take to talk about the fact that the massive intelligence failure, similar to the intelligence failure that led to 9/11, the first 9/11, the real one. Actually, the real one is in Chile, but the 9/11 that we all know and love. The intelligence failure that allowed that to happen in the first place, that also was used as a pretext to carry out this kind of like global project, and the Iraq war and Afghanistan and like Libya and Syria and on the war on terror that was just an absolute disaster. So very, very similar in that respect. So not only did Israel play a large role in creating Hamas in the first place, I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption. I don't think it's even barely a conspiracy theory just to wonder whether this specific operation was allowed to progress. We've seen the lies that have been spread around as well, and I'm not sitting here and denying that bad things haven't happened as part of this Al-Aqsa flood or that civilians haven't been targeted. I'm a little fuzzy on the numbers of the actual civilians that have been attacked and the people that are in the IDF and official military targets. That's a secondary thing. But I think it's a similar thing, right? It's an intelligence failure that allowed it to happen. There's been a lot of lies and propaganda about the kind of violence that has happened, decapitated babies, and this German woman that got held up as the avatar of like the virginal white woman that was raped and paraded through the streets, which, lo and behold, that didn't happen either. She was being brought to a hospital. So not denying that bad things have happened. Certainly they have. But there's also been a lot of lies and propaganda that's been used to justify this genocidal bombing campaign on Gaza that's killed thousands of people at this point. Over 1,000 children. Absolutely disgusting and disgraceful, which the vast majority of people in the United States government and the Canadian government fully support, including Genocide Joe. Genocide Joe. Hasanabi head here, but I really like this guy's takes and delivery method. Think I will join. Please do. Please join the community. And listen, Hassan doesn't need you, okay? Hassan doesn't need you. He's doing fine. He's doing fine. I need you. I need you to come support me. I got kids, okay? I got a kid. I got to take care of a kid. I'm not Mr. Big Shot. Oh, I'm Mr. Big Shot. Twitch guy. That's not me. I do not have a Ferrari. No, I do not. I have a Hyundai Elantra. I have a very sensible Hyundai Elantra. Join the friendship triangle. I think I could show the whole video. It feels so crass when we're talking about Free Palestine stuff to show my friendship triangle video. I don't think I should do that. That feels wrong to do. Bob is nice and loves his chatters. Well, here, at least here you can I can actually see your chats and we can actually have like a conversation. It's not like this totally like light speed, incomprehensible chat blob where you type something and then it's just immediately gone. You know? Anyway, later on in the stream, before I say goodbye today, when I tell my community that when I pass,
count on me, you're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Do you ever yell at
Lenin
chat?
and cat emotes? I am in.
Thank you, Krusty Dread, for the 2 months of Prime. That's right. That's my cat, Momo. I don't often yell at chat. No, we're friends. It's more chat that mocks me and humiliates me. Really. I should yell at chat more. Sometimes I yell at people when they come in here and they say mean things to me, but, you know, that's pretty rare. Anyway, I tell my community that when we pass 50 subs,
we simply
usually I try to go for,
mark
for 35
up the size of the
day.
account.
Why so Dagnus? Thank you for the 110 friend coin. Does the hand I have power windows? Yes, it does. Yes.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Sometimes he says words wrong. It's funny.
That's not true. Those are deep fakes. If you ever hear or see a clip of me when I'm saying something silly, misspeaking, don't believe it. There's all kinds of Russian disinformation that's floating around about that. There's AI and deep fakes. You never know. You never know what can. Don't trust your senses on that kind of stuff. If you ever see me saying something weird, it's for sure. It's probably Putin that's behind that. Anyway, I tell my community when we do pass 50 subs, which happens sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. I tell my community when we pass 50 subs, I sing a little song. I do a little karaoke. So, I'm a man of my word, as the Joker says. So later on today, in about half an hour, 45 minutes, I will be singing the song "Eye in the Sky" by the Alan Parsons Project. Marty, this is me and you. This is me and you. Anyway, before I do that, let's try and look at this important video where we examine before I sing the song by the Alan Parsons Project, let's look at this important video with Democracy Now! Where they examine the links between Hamas and Israel. Some more Putin propaganda being shared. You don't need to look at that. Anyway, let's look at this video again. Thanks Central Committee for the raid. Thanks to all the new community members. I'm really happy to have you with me today. Please come back. I do this stream every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, starting at noon Eastern. That's 1 a.m. Pyongyang time. So if you've just tuned in for the first time today, please come back. We do the stream every single day. I have a ton of great guests, all kinds of great shit going on in the stream every day. Okay, here we go.
Injured over the past 2 weeks, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres traveled today to the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing to Gaza to demand humanitarian aid convoys be allowed entry.
These trucks are not just trucks. They are a lifeline. They are the difference between life and death for so many people in Gaza.
Guterres said the UN is actively engaging with Israel and Egypt to get the aid trucks into Gaza. The BBC is reporting Hamas has offered
and join the
release some of
Discord. Sorry to turn this. I feel so crass sometimes trying to talk about this serious issue and also like trying to make a living here on Twitch. I hope people don't mind. But please, if you can, join the Discord server. We've got links in the chat right now. A lot of great stuff going in the Discord server. We've had a lot of really cool Halloween movie nights going on lately. What's the next one again? We got Army of Darkness, I think.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
We got Army of Darkness tomorrow at 10 p.m. We got Misery on Monday. And next Wednesday, we got 28 Weeks Later. All kinds of really great shit going on in the Discord server. Please join that if you can. And again, unlike some other big shots on Twitch, on our Discord server, you can actually have conversations because it's a little bit more of a more tighter knit community and that kind of stuff. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to do this indulgent self promo. Globocop, very generous. Thank you for these 6 gifted subs. Globocop, you've really been coming through today. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me indulge myself here. We'll continue with this video now.
Hostages it seized during its attack on October 7th.
I'm so sorry. One more thing I need to promote.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's just we got new people joining the community. I just want to promote the podcast that I do with Jordan Ewell. I know you might know Jordan Ewell from Twitter. We do a podcast called The Insurgents. Mike has been a guest on that a while back. We had a great conversation last night, actually, where we talked about this, and I was able to talk about some of my complex feelings about sort of the violence that we've been seeing and tried to give a little bit of a historical context about this kind of violence against civilians we're seeing, and talking about the cycle of violence of colonialism and apartheid, and giving some historical context to that to help us understand it a bit more. I think it was
through all this.
I was happy with it, so listen to that. Listen to the podcast as well. OnlyFacts, thanks for the gifted sub as well. Okay, we will continue now. We will continue.
In life and death for so many people in Gaza.
You can count on me.
Guterres said the UN is actively
talk you through
engaging
all
with
this.
Israel and Egypt to get
Low
the
observable
aid
good.
trucks
Thank you for the
into
gifted
Gaza.
sub.
The BBC is reporting Hamas has offered to release some of the hostages it seized during its attack on October 7th in exchange for a ceasefire, but Israel has rejected the deal. Earlier today, the Israeli military said it believes the majority of the 200 hostages seized are still alive. Israel's defense minister hinted Thursday a ground invasion of Gaza is imminent, telling troops they will soon see Gaza, quote, from inside.
I don't think that's going to go too well for them. I don't think that's going to go too well for the IDF.
Forces killed 13 Palestinians in a raid on the Nur Shams refugee camp near the city of Tulkarm.
Do you think if Russia succeeded in achieving the final form of communism, cats would be free for everyone? I think one day. I don't think we're going to be. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be alive to see this day. One day in the future, when we've created that global, stateless society of equality and communism, there will be a state-sanctioned cat distribution program. I believe that, yes.
Recent days, Israel's also detained 750 Palestinians, including lawmakers and journalists. On Thursday night, President Biden gave a primetime speech from the Oval Office calling for Congress to approve $14 billion for Israel, another $60 billion for Ukraine, and some for Taiwan. This comes as HuffPost is reporting their...
And like the whole thing of like, oh, we're funding Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan makes it so it really like just spells it right out for you, right? That like arming and funding Ukraine, it's not about democracy. It's not about sovereignty. Arming Israel, it's not about human rights. It's not about democracy. It's not about sovereignty. Taiwan, Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. These are Western client states. That's why we support them. Because they destabilize our enemies and they allow us to park missiles directly on their borders. And that's it. That's why we support them. All of this bullshit about human rights and democracy, all the things that our leaders say, it's just absolute Pure nonsense. You know, this is why we support these places. And I hope this incident, this whole last 10 days, has been clarifying for our very confused Ukraine plus Palestine flag in bio communities out there. I hope it's been clarifying for them. Evidently, this whole right to self-defense, it seems like we're a little bit selective. We're a little selective in which oppressed and colonized and invaded people are allowed to defend themselves with violence and which aren't. Kind of funny. It's almost as if these principles are not in any way applied consistently to anybody.
There's a, quote, mutiny brewing inside the State Department over Biden's policy on Israel.
Make it make sense. Well, it does make sense because Ukrainian nationalists and Israeli nationalists view themselves in the same way, that they're this outpost of Western civilization that are defending themselves against these Asiatic hordes. Right? That's they are in full agreement. Like these Ukrainian nationalists, and I'm making a distinction between these nationalists that have promoted this conflict and civilians that have been caught up in the middle of it. But they view themselves the same way. That it's ideologically linked. They're Western outposts. They're Western client states. And that's right. That's exactly why the Ukraine thing has been a big split for everyone. And I know people want to, I know obviously Putin is bad. We all recognize that Putin is bad, right? We must denounce Hamas and Putin at the same time. But as we know, we've been pumping arms into Ukraine, not just since the last 2 years, but over the last 10 years. We've been trying to grow this nationalist movement in Ukraine for decades now. And I don't think anyone should be surprised, just in the same way that I don't think anyone should be surprised that Palestinians want to defend themselves. Similarly, it's not the same thing, but it's a similar idea that I don't think anyone should be surprised that Russia or Putin saw the activities of the West in Ukraine, saw Ukraine being pulled further into the NATO camp, and is not interested in having NATO build military bases in what used to be their closest ally, right on their doorstep that's been used to invade Russia time and time again throughout history. The invasion's been really horrible. Many people have died, and it's an absolute tragedy. But the main thing that I've talked about since we started covering this conflict, which happened, again, a long time before 2022, our activity there, the West, the rules-based international order, I don't think it should be controversial to point out that it did represent a genuine security threat. And we shouldn't be surprised that Russia responded with an invasion, which they clearly said that they were going to do many, many times if we didn't stop funding and arming these militias and pumping weapons into the country, which we refused to do at every step of the way. Anyway, I'm getting way off base here. This is talking about, I mean, it's similar. It's connected, but it's not the main subject of what we're talking about, which is Israel-Palestine, and which is Israel's role in creating Hamas in the first place. So let's talk about that.
Joining us now in New York is Tarek Bakoni, Palestinian analyst and writer, president of the board of Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network, and former senior analyst for the International Crisis Group on Israel-Palestine. His recent piece for the New York Review is headlined, Gaza Without Pretenses. For years, Israel and Hamas maintained an unstable equilibrium that kept the Gaza Strip contained, but it was always likely to be temporary. Tarek is author of the book Hamas Contained, The Rise and Pacification of Palestinian Resistance. Tarek, welcome back to Democracy Now! Before we go to the history of Hamas, I wanted to ask you about the current situation, the latest that we hear. Looks like a ground invasion is imminent. The Rafah border is still closed, although there had been a deal to allow in 20 trucks of aid coming from Egypt into Gaza, though those inside, medical groups are saying even 100 trucks a day wouldn't quite deal with the crisis and the need inside.
Well, Amy, yes, the situation in the Gaza Strip is quite dire. What we see today is really a continuation of efforts by Israel to place the Gaza Strip on.
I'm not sure I agree with that, Mr. Reboot. I think if you apply that logic as reasoning for what Russia did, you can do the exact same for Israel. And first of all, it's also important to point out that, like, while I think the Ukraine conflict was provoked, I don't like there's horrible violence, and there's a lot of things that the Russian government does that I don't agree with. And, it doesn't justify, the murder of civilians or some of the violence that we've seen, but it's just pointing out the role that the West played in provoking it. But I just don't really think, because you can, I think what you're talking about is kind of like a circular logic in and of itself, where it's like Israel itself exists because it's a colonial foothold for Western imperialism in the Middle East. So, using that same logic, don't the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves against that kind of Western-sponsored ethnic cleansing? Does Iran have the ability to defend itself from this constant provocation and constant destabilization and sanctions and these kind of efforts? I don't think that logic totally tracks to mix these two things. Thank you, OnlyFacts, for another gifted sub. I appreciate it.
Under a complete
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And Klobocop as well. Thank you.
Anyway, a continuation of efforts by Israel to place the Gaza Strip under a complete blockade. And this has been ongoing for about 16 years now. And then after the offensive by Hamas on the 7th of October...
I think, excuse me, I keep interrupting this video. It's it's not the most productive way of doing it, but I think that is important to point out, right? We need to be focused on what imperialism is. And I think just being who's using that logic, you can apply that to Israel. I don't really think so, because we need to be aware of we're in the empire, right? And we need to be aware of the fact that the US led Anglo-American empire, the rules-based international order, this is the global imperial power that for the last 70 years since the post-war period has had this iron grip on global geopolitics, destabilizing and overthrowing governments around the world, controlling the global financial system. That's our empire. So we can criticize things that Russia does or other countries do, but ultimately, if we're anti-imperialists, and if you're a Marxist, as I am, you should be anti-imperialist. You need to focus on the empire that you live in, because we live in the major empire. So really, when my analysis on all these things, it flows from that. It's I'm going to criticize my own empire, the major empire, the global criminal cartel, basically, that is led by the United States. Canada's a junior partner in that. Britain is a junior partner, Australia, and all these other cuck countries. So that is my focus. As an anti-imperialist, that's always going to be my focus, what our empire is doing. Our empire props up Israel. Our empire props up Ukraine. Our empire is trying to turn Taiwan into another proxy war, which would be kind of the final front at this point, which would basically lead to full-on World War III. We're the ones that are doing that, and I, as an anti-imperialist, that's always where my focus is going to be and my criticism.
Israel placed the Gaza Strip under what it called a
Mr. Reboot, you say a country should have a right to align itself with whatever they want. They're independent. They're not independent, though. They're not independent. You're talking about Ukraine? Ukraine's not independent. They're totally dependent on the West. They're a Western client state. That's what the Euromaidan was about, to making sure that they weren't independent. Because there was a possibility that Ukraine was going to be independent, and they wanted to not take an IMF deal for billions of dollars of development, which always comes with caveats and is a debt trap. They wanted to take a deal. They wanted to make a deal with Russia to have cheaper Russian gas, and America and the Western countries helped overthrow their government in the Euromaidan, which was a coup. It wasn't some democratic movement for independence and sovereignty. It was a coup. We helped overthrow their government. We've been flooding the country with weapons since that time. We've been funding a proxy war in eastern Ukraine since that time. That's the opposite of independent. Even after this conflict, if they end up dividing up Ukraine and Western Ukraine stays as like in this NATO client state, it's not going to be independent. It's going to be all their leftist political parties are being banned. It's being primed for like financial penetration and like neoliberal shock reforms and bringing companies like BlackRock in to redevelop all the countries. Like they redevelop the country. It's not going to be independent. These client states are not independent. Like that's what being a client state is. Anyway, I will finally watch this video now, maybe.
Siege. What this means is that it's prevented the entry of water, fuel, electricity, and medicine into the Gaza Strip. Now, this is a form of collective punishment. We have to understand that Gaza Strip has about 2.3 million Palestinians. About 2/3 of them are refugees from homes in what is now Israel, and about half of that are minors and children. This is
a word on collective punishment as well. The way that the Israeli government have like openly talked about how they view Palestinian civilians and engaging in this process of collective punishment. This twisted settler logic, despite them employing these kind of arguments, actually completely legitimizes Hamas attacks on civilians, which of course I don't support. But by this idea of collective punishment, that people in Gaza and Palestinians are responsible for Hamas, by that exact same logic, Israeli civilians are responsible for the immense crimes of the Israeli government. So by this exact logic of collective punishment, they're saying that these kinds of attacks on civilians are totally legitimate. And again, that's not me saying that. That's the Israeli government saying it. It's only okay when the IDF does collective punishment.
And
that's a big part of... I keep pausing this video. Jesus Christ. That's a big part, though, of being part of this rules-based international order. We decide what the rules are, and we decide who gets to follow the rules and who doesn't get to follow the rules. We decide who has a monopoly on violence, right? We're allowed, when we do violence, we're allowed to. When the IDF uses violence, we're allowed to. When the U.S. military uses violence, that's totally okay. When someone directs violence towards us, that's terrorism. We need to respond to that with even more brutal violence, you know? Who has a monopoly on pausing these videos? Evidently me. So here we go.
Reliant on a total dehumanization of Palestinians in Gaza. What we're seeing happening at the moment is that humanitarian aid is being politicized, that humanitarian aid to the civilian population in Gaza is linked to political goals, and any form of effort to try to de-escalate is being blocked by the U.S. The fact that the U.S. vetoed the UN Security Council resolution yesterday is an indication of its willingness to allow Israel to continue both its bombardment of the Gaza Strip as well as the strangulation of Gaza's civilian population through the blocking of entry of humanitarian aid.
And explain what that resolution was that the U.S. rejected.
Well, it was a resolution that was tabled by Brazil, and it called for an immediate de-escalation and a ceasefire. It was a humanitarian ceasefire, which meant that the bombardment from the Israeli authorities would have to cease and allow for humanitarian aid to come into the Gaza Strip and for the restrictions to be eased. However, we see that this continues to, first of all, the U.S. blocked the resolution, and then when there were agreements to have, as you said, 20 truckloads to enter the Gaza Strip, which is far less than the minimum that would be required to sustain Gaza's civilian population, there are still obstacles to the entry of those trucks. We also have to understand that Gaza's population has been forced by Israeli authorities to evacuate the majority of the northern parts of the Strip. This has resulted in a forced displacement of about...
South America is the most humane about this. I guess never think about their connection to the issue. Well, people know...
1.1 million
people in the global south and the developing world know what America's values about human rights are about.
in the world.
And they know that it's bullshit. All these claims about
evacuation
respecting
really
democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East and all this shit. People know that that's not true.
Any kind of bombardment that the Israeli authorities are carrying out in the Gaza Strip are killing.
Just look at what people in the global south say about Ukraine as well. They know that NATO caused that conflict.
Here,
everyone knows that. We just don't believe that because we live in this gigantic propaganda panopticon. Everyone around the world realizes this.
And the bombing is indiscriminate, as Palestinians in Gaza are reporting, by intent.
This is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking Tuesday about Hamas.
This is part of an axis of evil.
Where have we heard that
of
before?
Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas. Their open goal, is to eradicate the state of Israel.
Your open goal is to do ethnic cleansing.
The open goal of Hamas is to kill as many Jews as they could, and the only difference is
your open goal is to ethnically cleanse these lands and permanently remove Palestinians from these lands.
They just don't have the capacity, but they murdered an extraordinary 1,300
in front of the German flag, too,
which
is a little on the nose.
In American terms, is like many, many, many.
They should have put Israel in Germany in the first place.
That's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Would have solved a whole lot of problems.
Tara Fakoni, you wrote the book Hamas Contained. Can you respond?
Well, I mean, this language that the Israelis and the American officials have been using to demonize Hamas has been entirely based in the effort to depoliticize the Palestinian struggle and to present any form of armed resistance against what is a violent apartheid regime as a form of terrorism. The impact of this is really to try to give Israel a carte blanche to continue dealing with the question of Palestine, with the quest by the Palestinian people to gain their inalienable rights.
Energy CC, couldn't agree more.
And through
should have put Israel in Western Germany and kept the communist Eastern Germany. Couldn't agree more.
Of the attack that
long live the
GDR. October to 9/11 is really a carte blanche for Israel to do what it wants to in the Gaza Strip, and it's an affirmation that all the lessons that have been learned after America's own 9/11 have really been lost. Now, this language isn't new. Successive Israeli governments have linked Palestinian resistance generally and Hamas specifically to 9/11 and to terrorism, and has used that link in order to reinforce and re-entrench its occupation. What we have to understand here is that this isn't an effort to try to quell to destroy Hamas specifically. This is an effort to pursue an ethnic cleansing campaign in the Gaza Strip.
But then how would the U.S. have reinstalled Nazis in the transitional government of West Germany? That's true. That would have interrupted that a little bit, unfortunately.
Hamas's attack to 9/11.
They had to make sure they were putting Nazis back in charge in Germany and putting them in charge of NATO and all these institutions.
Establishment
so
has articulated
they were pretty busy
before October 7th.
So the Israeli military, also Biden very much bonded, sort of bound to this analysis as well. Talks about the Hamas attack on October 7th, killing over 1,300 Israelis. Over 200 are being held by Hamas. Looks like the majority of them, according to the Israeli government, are still alive.
Whoa, what the fuck? Who's this? I'm going to try and be a little bit gracious here. That comment was way out of pocket and not acceptable. This is someone that just joined the community today from Libya. That shit's not going to fly. That shit is not going to fly over here. Jesus Christ.
The Israeli government says Hamas uses civilians as human shields. And in this comment of the Israeli military saying they've given a green light to move into Gaza whenever it's ready, the economy minister, Nir Barakat, said in an interview with ABC News concerns over hostages.
The whole human shields thing is very twisted, the way that Israel actually uses this tactic. Well, it's always an admission, right? Like we were saying, like your goal is to get rid of Jews. No, your goal is to ethnically cleanse all Palestinians. The Hamas uses human shields. No, the IDF uses human shields. It's always an admission. right? Hamas is just like Nazis. There's one country that's acting like Nazis right now.
You can count on
and
me.
it's
You're going to
Israel.
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
That's why that whole fucking comparison totally falls apart. Peritus, thank you for the gifted sub.
Hamas. Were you surprised by the October 7th
Yeah, they've been talking
attack?
about sending it. They're
talk about
apparently this ground invasion is going to start.
Is saying
but
right
yeah, they're going to end up getting
and,
wrecked.
Of course, what's happening in Gaza.
So I can see why they're reluctant.
Well, the 7th of October attack was certainly surprising for someone like myself who's been studying Hamas for a long time, but I imagine also for many Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, as well as probably for Hamas's leadership. It was surprising not in its timing, obviously, and not in the offensive, the nature of the offensive and how it took place, but it was surprising mostly in the scale of it and the ability of Hamas to really penetrate into Israeli-controlled territory around the Gaza Strip and to spend the length of time that fighters, Hamas and otherwise, were able to spend in Israeli towns. You have to understand that for many Palestinians and more broadly, there's a myth of an Israeli invincibility, that Israel is impenetrable, at least from the Gaza Strip, and that its army is unparalleled. And that expectation was probably in the minds of Hamas's leadership when they were planning and staging this attack. And instead of any form of effective defense on the Israeli side, what we saw was a complete shattering of this illusion. We saw the reality that actually
it's
Israel's
anti-Semitic to
army
associate
is
all
not
Jews with the
invincible.
Israeli state. Absolutely. And that goes for when Israel does that as well.
Is perfectly penetrated.
You know, there's been a deliberate project that has been ongoing
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
generations now to
through all
make
this.
that link between Israel and all Jews, which is anti-Semitic in and of itself. And I've continued to be inspired by the Jewish activists that have been so clear but in their condemnations of this and their refusal to go inside, to use their pain and their trauma to be used to justify genocide in Gaza. Junk State, thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. We're streaming a little late. I got to go in about 20 minutes. I got to go at the end of this video. I will do a little song because I promised people. I feel a little crass doing it, but we're gonna do it. But I got to get through this video first.
And that Hamas was able to overturn Israel's myth of invincibility very, very quickly. Now, the scale of the attack and
You're gonna have
the
good
number
old
of
Rob
hostages
to
that
talk you through all this.
Hamas was able
Thank
to
you, Peritus, for the gifted sub.
capture and take back into the Gaza Strip probably exceeded its expectations, which also meant that the retaliation...
Imagine Fallujah, but with more fighters and defensive fortifications. It'll be a very protracted and bloody conflict zone if it comes to it. And it'll be even more protracted and more bloody if Hezbollah gets involved, which is a possibility. And then who knows at that point what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows.
We now see is also probably far worse than Hamas.
You can count on
might have
me. You're going to have good
now,
old
that's not
Rob
to say that
to
Hamas
talk you
didn't
through all this.
anticipate
Thank you, Peritus,
some
for
form
another
of
gifted sub.
retaliation, because that has always been, at least in the past 16 years, the equilibrium between Hamas and Israel, that Hamas would try to pressure Israel through rockets or otherwise to lift or ease restrictions on the blockade, because
I have
the
no
blockade
idea
itself
if the U.S. is going to
a form
contribute.
of violence that's strangulating.
I really don't know
2
what's
million
going to happen.
Palestinians in Gaza, and Israel would respond with disproportionate military force that would result in the deaths of thousands of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Now, the expectation has always been from the Israeli side that this situation is tenable, that it can be sustained, and it adopted what it called the military doctrine of mowing the lawn, that it would do this every few years, and then that this equilibrium would be sustained indefinitely. What we saw on the 7th of October was Hamas overturning that equilibrium and saying, actually, you cannot have any kind of calm or security for your citizens.
I guess I don't know if it's come up anytime recently. I guess in theory, there will be 2 songs. If I get to 100 subs, but I'm running low on time.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you
and
through
thank
all
you,
this.
Peritus, for another gifted sub.
As your boot remains on our necks, the Palestinians will not acquiesce to their imprisonment silently.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I wanted to ask you if you could talk about Israel's involvement in Hamas gaining power. In 2009, Avner Cohen, a former Israeli religious affairs official who worked in Gaza for over 20 years, told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation." Another former Israeli official, Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev, said he was given a budget to help finance Islamist movements in Gaza to counter Yasser Arafat and his Fatah movement.
Talk you through all this.
Another former Israeli military official, David Chacham, said, quote, "When I look back at the chain of events, I think we made a mistake. But at the time,
thank you, Paradis, for the gifted sub, and thank you, Gold Greek, for another gifted sub as well.
Your response, Tarek Balkoni.
Well, the origins of that is really Hamas emerged as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood chapter in
But let's pay close attention to this as well, because we hear Netanyahu, we hear the Israeli government saying Hamas, they're the new Nazis. Anyone that supports Palestine, you support Hamas. Any pro-Palestine rally, why do you support Hamas? Hamas this, condemn Hamas, you must condemn Hamas. Like we've heard this over and over and over again over the last couple of weeks. So examining this link between Israel and creating Hamas in the first place and promoting them and destroying every single form of like secular organized resistance that Palestinians have put together over the generations. Leads to this exact phenomenon, right? So let's really try and pay attention to this. It's very important.
Gaza Strip, and the Muslim Brotherhood chapter was not a political party. It was a social party, and its operations in the Gaza Strip and throughout the Palestinian territories were actually granted licenses by Israeli occupying forces at the time. So there was a license for the Muslim Brotherhood chapter to operate openly in the Gaza Strip.
You can count on me.
Hamas was established in
1987
and became a political party and a military party that was engaged in active resistance against Israel's occupation, that the policies within the Israeli government shifted, and obviously it became less open to allowing Hamas to function. However, that did not deter Israeli authorities from encouraging and promoting divide and rule tactics between the Islamist nationalist movement, so Hamas, and secular nationalism around Fatah. And this has always been a tactic that the colonial forces have used globally, and obviously Israeli colonialism is no different. So it has directly and implicitly attempted divide and rule policies. This really turned and came
Sorry,
to a
I'm not
head.
into people in the chat trying to play this game of like taking pro-Palestinian protests and suggesting that it's motivated by like anti-Semitism. It's not true. It's not accurate. And it's just wasting everyone's time to debate that.
In 2007, when Hamas, after winning democratic elections in 2006, rose to power, and the Israeli authorities, along with the U.S., attempted to initiate a regime change operation, which facilitated a civil war between Hamas and Fatah and allowed Hamas to take over the Gaza Strip. Since
These are
then,
military targets,
Israeli
you see.
authorities have actively
This footage here. These are
embraced the idea
military
that
targets
Hamas would
being
be
attacked.
accepted as a governing authority in the Gaza
You've
Strip.
just
Now,
become an
part
elite
the
member
calculus
of
in
the
that
friendship
is
triangle.
because of Gaza's 2 million.
Which is totally legitimate under international law, going after these military targets. Thank you, Globocop, for the 5 gifted subs as well. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Palestinians. This is a demographic issue. Israel wanted to sever the Gaza Strip from the rest of historic
This is some guy,
Palestine
Rob
in
Russo,
order
some
to
leftist
reinforce
based in
its claim
Canada.
that
I
it's a
was
Jewish
turned on to
majority
this
state.
sick individual,
By
and I
getting rid of
found
2 million
this.
Hello, Leaping Larry.
2/3 of whom are refugees demanding
Thank you for
return.
the raid, Larry.
Israel
What's
can
up?
claim to be both a Jewish state and a democracy, and restructure what is its apartheid regime. Now, in order to do that, it acquiesced to maintaining Hamas in
Do you think
governance,
Israel knew in advance
and
the
it
attack?
claimed
Yes.
that it placed a blockade around the Gaza Strip because Hamas was
Yes,
in
I do
power.
think that.
And obviously, this was bought in the international community using what we were just talking about, the idea that Hamas is a terrorist organization, axis of evil, and therefore that this blockade makes sense. What policymakers don't understand is that Israel has engaged in blockades around the Gaza Strip and attempted to get rid of the population in the Gaza Strip long before Hamas was even established as a party. But with Hamas's takeover of the Gaza Strip, this created a perfect fig for Israel to maintain the Gaza Strip as a separate strip of land. And to do that, it had to
Jeremiah,
acquiesce and
thank
in
you for the
some ways
gifted sub.
even enable Hamas to maintain its position as a governing authority there. And this also further reinforced its efforts to try to maintain division among the Palestinian leadership and play divide and rule policies between the PA and Hamas.
What would you like to see happen, Tarek?
You can count on
now?
me. You're going to have
It
good old
looks
Rob
like
to talk you through
Israel
all this.
is on the verge of a ground invasion
Thank you, Peritus, for
of
another
Gaza.
gifted 7 for all the support.
What do you think needs to happen?
Well, the most immediate need right now is for a de-escalation. World leaders, and specifically the U.S. and the Biden administration,
They could stop
need
this
to
right now.
understand that this is not
They Genocide Joe owns
by
this.
Israel towards Hamas. What we are seeing
They could stop
now
this right now.
is the effort by Israel to pursue an ethnic cleansing campaign and to continue the Nakba, which began in 1948 and which has.
And sorry, before we continue here, I just want to post in the chat. My friend Jordan Ewell. Oh, Sam the Nanoman is already on top of it. Created this website, Ceasefire Today. If you're in America, it's a bunch of resources to be able to put pressure on your elected officials to call for a ceasefire. And we've talked about before too, a ceasefire is a first step. Like what needs to happen is the occupation needs to end. The occupation needs to end. A ceasefire needs to happen now because of the numbers of people that are dying. So if you want to put pressure on your officials to join the calls for a ceasefire, please, you can click on that website, and there's tons of easy resources to do that.
Has been ongoing since in fits and starts here and there. What we're seeing is a massive rupture.
Yeah, or it will happen
in
again.
The daily,
it's not going to
ethnic
stop.
Cleansing that Israeli authorities are implementing.
Like I've been saying, I made this point on our podcast that I do with Jordan yesterday. The violence is not going to stop as long as the occupation continues. The violence against unarmed citizens or civilians in Israel, that's the inevitable result of this system, this grotesque system of apartheid and settler colonialism. You colonize people for years, decades, centuries in some cases. In the case of Gaza, you put people in a concentration camp for entire generations. You know, people grow up for decades in this concentration camp from childhood to adulthood. That's the kind of violence you create. That violence. This is the violence that we saw in the initial stages of this. Is the inevitable result of apartheid and settler colonialism. If you want that kind of violence to stop, the occupation has to end. There's none of this Israel has a right to defend itself stuff. No, that's just creating more violence. We all knew what that means. So like that's a code word when you say Israel has a right to defend itself. To Israel has full right to just bomb indiscriminately residential neighborhoods and continue to keep people in this concentration camp. You know, that's what that means when our elected officials say that.
Against the Palestinians in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, as well as in the Gaza Strip. And now we're seeing that rupture take the ethnic cleansing campaign from a daily, continual basis into a significantly more focused attempt at getting rid of millions of Palestinians. We need to de-escalate, and we need to ensure that humanitarian aid comes into the Gaza Strip, because this is impacting Gaza's civilian population.
Yeah, did the French have a right to defend themselves in Haiti? No, but the Haitians did have a right to defend themselves. Oppressed and colonized people have a right to rise up and fight back against their colonizers and exploiters. And as we've seen time and time throughout history, in British India, in the settlement of North and Central and South America, in Haiti, in slavery era United States, in Vietnam, in Algeria, thank you, OnlyFacts, you see this cycle of violence play out, you know, and you can be shocked and scandalized and horrified when that violence is visited upon citizens or unarmed people. But the source of that violence is this institution of settler colonialism and apartheid. That's what happened. That's what it creates. It's the inevitable result.
is an apartheid regime that is maintaining a system of domination against millions of Palestinians. It's the only sovereign power in the land of historic Palestine, and it allows rights only to Israeli Jewish citizens, not to Palestinians.
Absolutely, Larry. And this is why Canada is friends with Israel. This is why we support Israel so much. It's not because of some anti-Semitic conspiracy. It's not because of some like protocols of elders of Zion nonsense. It's because we're friends, because we're both genocidal settler colonialist nations. And that's why we get along. That's why we support Israel. Because we're seeing in Israel that process that created Canada and created the United States, we're seeing it happen in real time. That's why we're friends. It's not because of you don't have to dig into this conspiracy, or Australia as well. Yeah. You don't have to promote some kind of crazy conspiracy to wonder why.
Testament to the fact that reality
we just love doing genocide,
and that overturns the assumption that the U.S. administration, as well as regional powers, have always had.
Canada has no leftist movement.
Israel can continue to act with impunity without any
to speak of
citizens, and I believe we cannot go back to that paradigm anymore.
Didn't we used to be the good guys? Actually, no. I think that's the big common misconception. We were the good guys once for about 3 years during World War II, and we were the bad guys before that, and then we went right back to being the bad guys immediately after. We were the good guys for that very brief span of time. Not even 3 years.
Tarek Bakoni, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Palestinian analyst and writer, president of the board of Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network, author of the book Hamas Contained, The Rise and Pacification of Palestinian
The Soviets were the good
Resistance.
guys.
We will link to your piece in the New York Review. Headline, Gaza Without Pretenses. For years, Israel and Hamas maintained
What was World War I? There were no good guys.
equilibrium that kept the Gaza Strip contained,
The
but it
Bolsheviks
was
were the
always
good guys of
likely to
World
be
War I.
temporary.
Because they recognized the contradictions of World War I and used that to overthrow their exploitative czarist society. They overthrew feudalism. Okay. Yeah, that was a great interview. Really important to examine this kind of link. Now I have to do this really bizarre abrupt turn. I have to go in about 10 minutes to go pick up my kid from school. As I mentioned, it's been an ongoing thing with the community that when I get to 50 subs, I sing a little song. And today I've doubled that. So I guess I'm a man of my word, regardless of how awkward I find it that we're talking about this serious subject matter. And now I have to pivot into singing for you. I feel a little weird about it.
You can count on me.
I feel a little weird
good
too.
Old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Kung Fu Sasquatch, for the tier 1. I feel a little weird to sing right now when there's 800 people watching this stream, but I tell people when I get to the certain number of subs, I sing a song. That's what happened. So that's what we're doing, I guess. I'm going to be doing 2 songs, I suppose. I can't fucking believe I'm doing this, but...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We appreciate you covering this.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Useless, thank you for the 21 months. I appreciate you too as well. And thank you, the Corgi Dad, for the gifted sub as well. Did you get new cans? Yes, I did. And I don't like them as much too. My old ones broke. I had this cheap pair of noise canceling headphones that sounded great, and these ones just don't sound as good. It's actually very annoying. Anyway, a little levity, a little lightheartedness. I will now be, I guess.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Christ. Thank you, Paradis, for another gifted sub. I will now be singing the song Eye in the Sky by the Alan Parsons Project. Here we go. This is one of my favorite songs. Don't think sorry's easily said. Don't try turning tables instead. You've taken lots of chances before, but I ain't gonna give any more. Don't ask me, that's how it goes. 'Cause part of me knows what you're thinking. Don't say words you're gonna regret. Don't let fire rush to your head. I've heard the accusation before, and I ain't gonna take any more. Believe me, the sun in your eyes makes some of the lies worth believing. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind. I don't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. 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 Don't leave false illusions behind. Don't cry, I ain't changing my mind. So find another fool like before, 'cause I ain't gonna live anymore believing some of the lies, while all of the signs are deceiving. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. Mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind, but I ain't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. 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 I'm the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind, and I don't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. I can read your mind. I can read your mind. I can read your mind.
Wow, okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
Okay. Jesus. Rad Left Dad, thank you very much for the 10 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. And as I said, apparently now I need to do 2 songs. This is the only one that I could think of to do. The next one, and then I really have to go after this. This is the next one. I did Christopher Cross a few weeks ago. I got another Christopher Cross song for you. This is Arthur's theme by Christopher Cross. Another one of my favorite songs. No requests because I got to do songs from the Rob canon that I already know. If I'm starting to do songs that I'm not familiar with, then it becomes confusing. And I guess I should plug my Bandcamp. Did you know that I have written and recorded a bunch of songs?
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Did you know that?
Do you know Maneater?
Maneater by Hall & Oates. BBTTXU. Thank you for the 11 months tier 1. It's not my favorite Hall & Oates song, but I do know it. Do you know that I also have recorded and released almost an entire album worth of songs this year? Well, I have. If you want to check that out, some of my original recordings and compositions, you can do that by clicking that Bandcamp link. I may do some kind of a Spotify release at some point. We'll see. I actually might be applying for a grant to actually make a real kind of recording, because you can get factor grants in Canada to like get a bit of a budget to do that. So I'm working on that right now. Anyway, here is song number 2. Then I really have to go. This is Arthur's Theme by Christopher Cross. Once in your life you find her, someone who turns your heart around, and next thing you know, you're closing down the town. Wake up and it's still with you, even though you left away across town. Wondering to yourself, hey, what have I found? I know it's crazy, but it's true. If you get caught between the moon and New York City, the best that you can do is fall in love. Just fall in love. Sorry, I messed that one up. Arthur, he does as he pleases. All of his life, his master's toys, and deep in his heart, he's just a boy, living his life one day at a time. He's showing himself a pretty good time. He's laughing about the way they want him to be. When you get caught between the moon and New York City, I know it's crazy, but it's true. If you get caught between the moon and New York City, the best that you can do, the best that you can do is fall in love. Join with me at home. When you get caught between the moon and New York City, I know it's crazy, but it's true. If you get caught between the moon and New York City, the best that you can do, the best that you can do is falling. Between the moon and New York City, I know it's crazy, but it's true. That was maybe ill-advised, that one. I thought that was a little pitchy. That's a little out of my range. I thought about going the octave below on that. I thought about going the octave below, and I was like, no, I'll just try and do it the way that Christopher Cross does it. I don't. That was tricky. That one was tricky. It is hard to do. It was pretty good. Okay, well, Paradise. Well, Paradise is allowed to make fun of me, so it's okay. Oh boy. I gotta go now. I gotta go. Thanks for everyone for tuning in today.
Rob to talk you through all this.
If you just joined the community for the first time today, please come back, okay? I'll be back on Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time. That's 1 a.m. Pyongyang time. Do the stream every single day. Thank you, Paradise, for another gifted sub. Thank you again for joining the community. I gotta go now. And once again, I'm just going to plug my if for whatever reason you enjoy my singing, please follow the link to the Bandcamp and listen to the almost album's worth of songs that I've released over the last year. All my neighbors are probably hearing that, going like, what the hell's going on? The hell's going on over there? Okay. Whew, that was nerve-wracking. That was nerve-wracking, that one. Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, have a nice evening, everybody. Have a nice weekend. Join the Discord server. Join the Discord server. That's where the community kind of lives when I'm not online. I'll be back on Monday. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I really do appreciate all the support.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Mordorkaj, thanks for the 7 months tier 1. Thank you for that. Are we not already raiding someone? Didn't I just try and raid? Did that not work? Fuck. You do Canadian politics too? Yeah, we talk about Canadian politics often. I think I've been covering Israel-Palestine a lot because it's in the news, but I do often talk about
You're gonna have good old Rob
Canadian politics. We talked a lot about the whole Nazi incident. Okay. I'm gonna rate our friend David. David's going to be probably pleasantly surprised with this raid here. Thank you again, folks. Yeah, join the Discord. There's another Discord link in there. It's been really cool to see a bunch of new community members. That's really exciting. You know, I'm trying to do my best to make a little living over here on Twitch, so I really, really appreciate all the support that people have shown today. And every day. And every other day. I haven't forgotten about that either. So I hope people come back on Monday. And it's not a cult.
We simply
really important to
use
point
the
out.
computer to mark up the size of the account.
It's not
See
a cult.
you later, Rob Bunwave.
It's definitely not a pyramid scheme. It's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. Okay? Thank you, Useless, for the 500 friend coin. And I'm not sponsored by Arms Manufactured either. Manufacturers. Have a nice weekend, folks. Free Palestine. I love you.